Welcome, everyone, to the Islanders Never Say Die podcast. I'm your host, TJ, and with me here, as always, is the grumpy old man. They say there's no shame to his game because he's always the same.
That's me.
Grumpy, how are you this fine Saturday evening? Coming at you live Saturday evening, Grumpy. How are you?
Okay. Doing all right.
Just all right. Oh, is it just all right because the Rangers are knocking on the doorstep? Maybe Eastern Conference Finals. Is that why?
Well, it'll be Florida against the Rangers in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Dallas probably against Vancouver,
I would say.
And I missed on I thought the Hurricanes would beat the Rangers. I was wrong. I picked Dallas to beat Colorado. I picked Florida to beat Boston. And I think Vancouver they're better as an overall team than Edmonton.
Sure.
So hey, 75%, I guess that's not too bad.
We'll be talking more about that here in a second. But for those of you who are new to the show, new to the channel, welcome. This is an All Islanders podcast that takes place every single Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. So if you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content that we put out, if you enjoy, the discussions that we have, if you get a few laughs from it, if you think we challenge you to critically think, if you enjoy the content any way, shape, or form, make sure to do a few things here for us. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss out on any of our future videos and our future podcast, and make sure to hit the like button. If you hit the like button, first off, that helps engagement. It helps get the podcast out to the masses, and also lets myself and Grumpy Old Man know that you like what we put out there and you like the content that we produce. So always make sure to subscribe and like the video if you like the content. We also do have a secondary podcast called TJ and the Grumpy Old Man. It is an all sports podcast that takes place every single Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We talk anything and everything sports on that show. It's myself, the Grumpy Old Man, and the Magnificent Son X talking about sports, and that's soccer, that's hockey, that's football, that's college athletics, that's baseball, that's basketball, literally anything and everything sports on that show every single Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You could find the link to that show. It's called TJ and the Grumpy Old Man in the description below, or as a featured page here, Grumpy, on our YouTube channel. For today's episode, we've got a few things that we want to make sure we're able to go ahead and cover. I feel like this off season and and even I guess before the offseason maybe had started, once it looked like the impending doom was inevitable for the Islanders, a lot of people started this rebuilds don't work nonsense. And we're going to be talking about that, asking the questions, do rebuilds work? We're going to also be talking about a potential big splash by the Islanders signing Maxim Tsyplakov. Again, no idea if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, but we're going to talk about that. He's generated quite a bit of buzz amongst the Islander fans here as of recent. So we're going to talk about those two items and kind of what's happening in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But Grump, I think it's good for us to give a little recap you're giving earlier. Rangers waltzed past the Carolina Hurricanes.
They didn't waltz past Carolina. I think you see what Carolina's problems are. They're real easy.
Yes, blatantly obvious what the issues are. 0 special teams were abhorrent in the postseason, and they do not have a goalie. That's their big. They have more shorthanded goals than they scored power play goals in the postseason. That's a problem.
They don't have a goaltender. That's number one.
Let me correct myself. Not the postseason, in that series. Go ahead, though.
Yeah, they don't have a goaltender. It's 3 things for them. They don't have a goaltender. Number one, biggest one. Freddie Anderson, he's, serviceable goaltender, but you're not going to win. Look at the difference between Sergachev and him. That's why I find it laughable when people say, "Oh, well, you don't need a really good goaltender."
You mean Shesterkin, right? You said
Shesterkin, yes. You don't need a really good goaltender. Any goaltender is going to do. No, it's not true. Okay, you need the goaltender to come up with big saves at big moments, and Shesterkin did that the whole series. Carolina had that game 6 in total control. They hit a couple of posts, they hit a crossbar, and Shesterkin makes a couple of great saves, and Freddie Anderson shits the bed down the stretch. He did his best Semyon Varlamov this or Tristan Jarry impersonation down the stretch. He was terrible. That's number one that they need. Also, they need net front presence. They don't have a net front presence, which is a big problem. And they need a heart transplant, kind of like Florida got with Tkachuk. They need something like that I think that would put them over the top. Now, Kochetkov could wind up being that goaltender that they're looking for. Right now, they don't have it. So they're only able to go so far. You see teams like Florida. Now, was Bobrovsky? I thought he was outplayed by Swayman in the series against.
Do we not want to just finish, wrap it up there on that? I'll interrupt you because I don't want you just running through everything and me just sitting silent. I will say this, right? The issue is this. You've got 2 power play goals and give up 2 shorthanded goals. You're never going to win a series like that. Ever, ever, ever. I don't give a shit who you have in net. If you only scored 2 power play goals on almost 20 attempts and you give up 2 shorthanded goals, you don't deserve to be in the series. You don't.
Well,
they have a miserable goalie, and Freddie Anderson's absolutely finished in cash. You're 100% right on that. Shesterkin's a better goalie. Better goalies have the ability to steal you a series. Freddie Anderson's not stealing any series anytime soon. And guess what? Freddie Anderson was just as vulnerable against the Rangers as he was against the Islanders. We just didn't capitalize on those vulnerabilities that were very obvious and clear.
Because we don't have the talent that the Rangers had. That's
game 1. Think about how many opportunities we had, down low opportunity, chance after chance, and he looked shaky. We just couldn't put anything into the back of the net, right? That wasn't, Freddie Anderson was staying on his head. No, we missed our opportunities and chances. The Rangers did it. The Rangers, as I mentioned 2 shows ago, and I mentioned last show, I don't know. I know we're Islander fans, but maybe it's time to say the Rangers are a pretty good team. They won the President's Trophy. They're on their way to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think Bobrovsky is playing like absolute shit for Florida, and he better lock in if they want to have a chance to beat the Rangers. Simple as that. He better play at the Bobrovsky level of last year if they're going to beat the Rangers.
Florida's going to beat the Rangers.
Not
Florida's going to beat the Rangers.
Just
Florida will beat the Rangers.
Carolina was beating the Rangers. They better have better goaltending play if they want to beat the Rangers.
Florida will beat the Rangers. Absolutely. Okay. Florida is a better team than the Rangers. They have all those things that Carolina doesn't have. They have. They absolutely do.
What's Bobrovsky's numbers look like in the postseason? Awful. The answer is awful.
Okay,
he has been.
What are his numbers?
He has. I'll pull him up. He's been bad this postseason. I'll pull him up. Give me a sec. He's been poor this postseason. Simple as that. He better play better hockey if he wants to win, and the Florida Panthers want to beat the Rangers. Simple as that.
Florida absolutely dominated their both opponents. totally dominated both of their opponents.
Really?
Really?
How many marred calls did Florida need to benefit from, like cross-checking from behind, running into goalies, and not being called against? How many of those did they need to go ahead and benefit off of?
Crimea River. It's playoff hockey. Crimea River. They dominate. They absolutely dominated Boston. Boston are the New York Islanders with a little bit more talent.
That's a lot more talent. They have a lot more talent than the Islanders.
They get beat because they can't, again, Boston, like the Islanders, are not a team that's capable of winning a Stanley Cup because they're playing hockey from the 1990s. This is 2020, 2024. That's what this is. All those that old system of let's grind it out all the time. It doesn't work. Absolutely does not work. It's a speed game now. The league has legislated all those other things out of the game. That's why you don't see teams like that win anymore. The teams with speed and the ability to move the puck, those are the teams that are aggressive on the forecheck. Those are the teams that win. Florida's. Last year, Vegas, right?
I'd argue, at least with the Boston Bruins, they're much better defensively than the Islanders. Their goaltending was fantastic. You're right. They play and
they got blown out. They were blown out. I don't care that the series was 4-2. They were absolutely dominated by Florida. Total domination by Florida.
Okay.
Total domination.
We'll agree to disagree on that one. I don't think it was right. You refuse to say the Rangers dominated, and I mean dominated the Hurricanes.
Dominate the Hurricanes.
To say
they did not. They were better on specials, and their goaltender was better. That was enough. Okay.
How many overtime games did the Rangers win? One? Same exact.
Two.
One or two?
Two overtime games. They beat Carolina.
The Hurricanes won an overtime game. You're wrong, I believe, Grumpy. I'll pull it up, though. But each of the series, one team won an overtime
Carolina did not win an overtime game. The Rangers won both overtime games. You can look it up. You're wrong. And then I want you to admit you're wrong.
I'm wrong. That's fine.
Just say you are a failure.
Rangers, here's the one thing, Grumpy. I was damn right about the Hurricanes having no shot in hell beating the Rangers. I was right about that one. And you could go ahead and stand yourself on the hill and say, whoa, Florida. Whoa, Florida dominated the Boston Bruins.
What did I say going into that series? Freddie Anderson. He has to be better.
You said I kept telling you all series long at the beginning of that series, they are not playing good enough hockey. The way they're playing hockey right now, they have zero shot.
They outplayed the Rangers. The majority of the game, they outplayed the Rangers. Okay. But here's the thing. The Rangers were infinitely better on specials, particularly early in the series when they just everything on power play was a goal. That's why they're going to lose to Florida. You look at the Rangers' power play was not great at the end of the series. Maybe they're getting cold. If they got cold against Florida, they're done. Okay, Florida is really freaking good. Dismiss Florida at your own risk. That's fine.
Well, both these teams are very good. You don't get to the Eastern Conference Finals without being a good team. And guess what? You don't win the President's Trophy without being a good team. All I'm saying is this. Every step of the way, people keep saying, the Rangers, I'm not so sure about them.
Who says that?
You absolutely have. This most recent series against the Hurricanes, absolutely
that doesn't mean that I think the Rangers suck.
I didn't say that. If you listen, I just say you're like, the Rangers, I don't think they're going to be.
First of all, I didn't say that. I never said that.
You verbatim said you didn't think the Rangers are going to beat the Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay, but that's not what I said. The Rangers, man, that's not what I said.
You said the Rangers will not beat the Carolina Hurricanes, right?
Yeah, okay, but that doesn't mean I think, the Rangers, no. The Rangers do what the Rangers do in the playoffs. When they're scoring on that power play, they're really, really tough to beat. That's what they did the beginning of the series. At the tail end, not so much, which let the Hurricanes come back into the series. You have a 3-1 lead, again, just like Islanders, just like Boston. When you have multi-goal leads in the third period and you can't hold on to it, you don't deserve to win. It's just that plain and simple. Carolina absolutely controlled play against the Rangers. And that third period, they hit a couple of posts and a crossbar. Bang. Kreider gets the first of his hat trick in the third period. And congrats to Chris Kreider, right? You need guys like that. We've had people, certain Lamanites, who want to say, well, Chris Kreider, he's finished. He's not. He's absolutely not. He's a tried and true playoff performer. And they had the goalie. And he was really, really good in big moments. That's why they won.
Well, guess what? They have the goalie going into the next series as well. They have the goaltender advantage over the Florida Panthers. You asked what are Bobrovsky's numbers so far this year in the postseason? He's posted a .902 save percentage so far in the postseason. I'm not saying that's great, but it sure as hell is not, Grumpy.
And he's 8-3. Okay.
Here's the thing, right? Florida has good casting crew. Look at the teams Florida played. Tampa, which again, you talk about
Tampa's better than Washington. Tampa's better than Washington.
Let me finish. Oh, they dominated Tampa. I don't think they dominated Tampa. I think Tampa was a few bounces. I think Tampa was a few bounces away, Grumpy. I think that series is a lot closer than people think.
You're right. They're about 15 bounces away from winning that series.
Yeah, you're wrong. But anyway, I'm telling you,
I think
Bobrovsky has to play better hockey than he's playing right now if they want to beat the Rangers. He can't go post a 900 save percentage and expecting a waltz on in to beat the Rangers. That shit ain't going to happen. So he better start playing some better hockey if they want to beat the Rangers. Because holy shit, could you imagine if the Rangers win the Stanley Cup? My God.
I know that's what you're rooting for, but it's not happening.
I'm not rooting for that.
You know what I'm Rangers fan.
You know what I'm rooting for? You know what I'm rooting for, Grumpy? I'm rooting that the Florida Panthers beat the Rangers, and then guess what? I don't care. Vancouver's never won a cup. I'd like to see Vancouver against the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup final, and I wouldn't mind to see Dallas. I just don't want to see the Rangers in the Cup finals. That's the one team I don't want to see win.
Well, you don't need to worry about that because they're losing to Florida.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll take your word on it, just like I guess I took your word on it against Carolina. But I picked Carolina to win. I thought it was going to go 7 games.
Florida, I knew was going to beat Boston. Florida's been the best team in the East this year. Absolutely.
It was funny. You were saying Carolina before the series.
Yeah, I flipped. That's right. I know.
You always Carolina. You said that even going in Tarsi. Carolina's the best team in the Eastern Conference. Okay. I just said everybody keeps best team in the East. I'm like, man, I said maybe the Rangers deserve to be in the conversation for best team.
They're not. They're not the best team in the Eastern Conference.
Okay. We'll say this. They won the President's Trophy. And
by what? 1 point. By 1 point over Florida, right?
Oh my God.
Okay.
Discredit what they've done, why don't you?
Okay, I'm not. I'm just saying, don't think that you think I just don't think that the Rangers are as good as Florida. And you're going to find out.
The Rangers, their last 9 games, they've scored a power play goal. They're 9-0. If they score a power play goal, they've won their last 9 postseason games. So I'll tell you this: Florida better freaking make sure no power play goals go in against the Rangers. No power play goals or no shorthanded goals. No power play goals going against them. I'll tell you that much.
Florida is a team built to play playoff hockey with talented guys.
Their goaltender has come up lackluster all postseason long. He better play some fucking better hockey if they want to beat the New York Rangers. Simple as that.
I think if he just plays like he has, they walk through that series.
902 save percentage. Keep
what is Shesterkin's numbers?
I'll pull up Shesterkin's.
What's his goals against? What's his goals against? Because it was one outlier game.
No, he was giving up goals in droves against Tampa. Then he played the antiquated Boston Bruins.
Okay, so what were his goals against?
My God, 902 save percentage.
What were his goals against average?
I don't give a shit. What is goals?
It counts. That's the most important. How many goals you let in a game?
The most important thing is how many percentage of the shots you save.
No.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. How many goals you give up a game?
Full stop. When Boston was registering 12 and 15 shots a night, it's not like you had much work to do for Bobrovsky, but he still was letting them
go when they count.
So
when Carolina's shooting 50 from off angles, and that's another thing, Carolina would not shoot the puck on the power play. They refused to shoot the puck on the power play. I mentioned for those who catch up with me on Twitter.
Go ahead.
I said right from game 1, I said, why is Carolina not shooting the puck on the power play? It took 3 games after that until the national broadcast caught up with it. Yeah, they're just not shooting the puck on the power play. We don't understand why not. That was part of their problem. They got too fancy on the power play. And that's a problem that Carolina has. They're basically a finesse team. They need a big net front presence on that team. They absolutely do. That's what they need to get to the next level. I'd much rather be Carolina than a lot of teams in the league because their problems are really easy to dissect. Now, I'm not saying getting those players is so easy.
A heart transplant is not easy.
Not really. Not really. And certainly a net front presence is something that you can do. Sure. Absolutely. They have $29 million in cap space this offseason. Yep, they have some guys who are going to walk, but their farm system is just absolutely loaded. You might see a little transition from them at the beginning of next year, but they need to make a couple of moves, and they'll be right back in the mix.
Answer your question. Shesterkin has a 923 save percentage.
I didn't ask save percentage.
You did. You
You're getting 50 shots on you. What's his goals against average? I want to know goals against average, because at the end of the day, you want to know what wins? Giving up more, scoring more goals than your team gives up. It's not save percentage.
Sure. You know what? It's really good when one team doesn't register any shots on that.
Well, that means that maybe their defense is damn good, and they don't let you get shots.
I'm going to say maybe Boston, who squeaked in.
What's the goals against? You're still not answering the question.
Are you going to let me speak?
No, I want you to answer my question.
I will answer your question. I'm going to go ahead and continue to speak, though.
Oh.
I'll tell you this. Maybe Boston, who squeaked in 7 games against a team that they own and absolutely dominate, maybe they're not as good, Grumpy, as what we thought. Simple as that. How many overtime wins and losses or how many overtime losses and shootout losses did they have to help prop their regular season point total up? Number 2 in the NHL for overtime / shootout losses. Only team that had more was the Islanders. Simple as that. Not a great team, the Boston Bruins. They should go through a rebuild as well. Welcome to You're Not Good Enough and Your Core is Old, ladies and gentlemen. The save percentage of Bobrovsky is a 932 save percentage or goals against average, and a 940 save percent or goals against average there for Shesterkin.
I don't care about what is the goals against average.
Goals against average. Goals against 932.
Okay, that's save percentage. That is not
332 to 240.
Okay, so they're virtually identical, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, there you go.
Guess what? Do you think the Rangers are going to register 15 shots a game, Grumpy? No, I don't even know. Like, I know you're trying to
You're underselling Florida. Florida.
Here's the thing.
Florida will win.
Florida will win the series.
Listen here, Ranger boy. Listen here, Ranger Rick. Ranger Rick, listen here. Florida's winning that series, Ranger.
Florida will win the series if Bobrovsky plays good hockey. If he plays like shit, they will lose.
They're going to win.
What was that? I don't understand. Like, Florida that should be a controversial statement.
Florida will win.
If Bobrovsky puts a 900 save percentage out there, Florida's going to lose this series.
Save percentage doesn't mean anything. Save percentage means nothing. It's goals against.
I'm going to say the Rangers are going to register more than 15 shots.
And they'll lose. They will lose.
Okay.
They will lose.
I hope you're right. Grumpy. We're on the same team. I
am right, Ranger Rick. I know you want the Rangers to win so bad so you can call out the Islander fans. I know that's what you want to do.
I
know that's what you want.
That's wrong. I want Florida playing either Vancouver or Dallas.
Well, Florida will. Then you don't even need to worry about it. Florida's going to advance.
You told me that last time to put blind faith in the Grump. Whoa, Carolina. Whoa, they're not going to lose.
I wasn't emphatic that Carolina was winning. I thought Carolina would win.
Every single time people just continue to just ignore the success the Rangers have had this year. And all I'm saying is this: Florida and the Rangers is going to be a close series. And I hope and pray to God that the Rangers don't advance, because man, oh man, could you imagine if the Rangers are, let's say somehow Vancouver beats Dallas. Dallas is the better team out there in the West.
Dallas. It's going to be Dallas and Florida in the finals, like I predicted.
Okay.
Dallas and Florida. They're the two best teams.
No, you didn't predict that. You predicted Carolina to win.
Manhandled Colorado.
You predicted. Okay. Colorado losing their goal leader. Colorado losing their goal leader because he had another violation for the drug policy in the
Not
NHL.
Good enough.
Well, here's the thing: when you 9 goals in the playoffs, he was averaging a goal a game before he got suspended for 6 months. That kind of hurt your team, and they missed Devon Taves for a total of 3 or 4 games.
Devon Taves was playing
3 or 4 games. Yeah,
I don't know. He played last night. That's all I know.
Yeah.
They lost at home.
Lost in double overtime.
They lost 3 games at home.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yep.
Here's the thing: Dallas travels. They have the best record in the league in road games. The best in the league.
What was Colorado's biggest issue? Can you tell me what Colorado's biggest issue was?
They had to play Dallas.
No. What was the issue? Why did they lose that series? What was the biggest glaring issue for that team? It's easy. Goalie. Holy shit. Goaltending was absolutely miserable for the Colorado Avalanche. If they had an average or even above average goalie, they win that series. How many weak goals were we going to see Colorado just hemorrhage left and right?
That's not why they lost. They were dominated. You don't go up 3-0 every single game, and then
they didn't go up 3-0 every single game. The first few they did, but they didn't towards the end of the series. No, they didn't. Their goaltending play for Colorado was awful. Awful.
If you can't see that that Dallas was a better team than Colorado. I can't help you. If you
Dallas
can't
was
see
the
that
better
Florida,
team. Dallas was the better team. All I'm saying
well,
is
then
this.
what are you complaining about?
Colorado's biggest issue was goaltending. There's a trend, Grumpy. I'm trying to
No,
hint at.
Colorado's not good enough.
Poor goaltending is losing quite often this year in the postseason.
Dallas plays a north-south game. That's what they play. And they're big, they're physical, and they're fast.
Poor
They're
goaltending.
good. Now, I thought that was a really well-played series, but Dallas was the better team in that series. There's nothing else. You can say anything to convince me that Georgiev was the reason why they lost. Dallas implemented their will on top of Colorado.
Georgiev was definitely a reason they lost. If they had a better, if Swayman's in it, you think Colorado loses that series? No,
Probably.
but here's the thing. Probably not is the answer.
Probably yes.
Oh, fucking stop. Okay.
Probably
Here's the thing. Georgiev's numbers were awful. He was miserable in the postseason for them. He is not a starting quality goalie to win you a Stanley Cup. The reason I mention this, goaltender and goaltender performance in the postseason matters if you win a Stanley Cup. It does. You'll see occasionally a guy who's like, who is this goalie? Who is that goalie? Who wins a cup? Most times having a good, competent goalie helps you win a Stanley Cup.
I agree with you.
Well, that's the point I'm making the whole time, but you just want to fight me every which way we're going, Grumpy.
No, you're trying to say everyone's overlooking the Rangers. Who's overlooking the Rangers?
We're done with the Rangers. We're talking about Colorado and Dallas.
Colorado was outplayed by Dallas. Colorado was outplayed by while you were sleeping.
Listen,
I was watching the game.
Listen. I know it must be tough for you to multitask watching TV while doing this, but Grumpy, I'm not saying Dallas did not outplay Colorado on the series as a whole. I'm saying a big reason they lost, their goalie didn't come up with saves when saves were needed at times too.
What can I tell you? Dallas just
their goals.
Dallas is better than they were. It's not a crime.
I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying goaltending, there was a big disparity in net between Jake Ottinger and Georgiev. There was.
What were their numbers? They were so different.
Oh, my God. Okay.
Because Ottinger a goalie let in against Rantanen, and it was interesting. They had Lundqvist talking about, Allaire, who used to be his goaltender coach. You say, don't play the technique, play the game. Where he got beat by Rantanen up top because, like all those goalies are taught, we've talked about on the show a couple of weeks ago, where the goalies are getting beat over top shoulder when they were up against the pipe because they can't cover the top. And he said, and he said something that Georgiev did, which stopped the goal earlier in the game, where he saw the guy coming, he saw where he was, and he come up from that total down stance, and he was able to make the save up high. Okay. Most of those goalies does not happen to them.
Jake Ottinger has a 209 goals against average this year in the postseason and a 918 save percentage. He's playing good hockey right now. When you look at Georgiev, he's playing poor hockey right now. Just like he has also. I'm going to pop it up. I'm giving you the visual aid. Please give me a moment. You look at Georgiev's numbers, a 277 goals against average and an 897 save percentage. Georgiev is not playing good hockey. And this season, he had an 897 save percentage as well. He's playing exactly like he did in the regular season, in the postseason, and that is not good enough to win you a Stanley Cup. It's not.
So do you feel that a lot of that is because of the weak Colorado defense?
I don't think Colorado plays more of a run and gun style. I will tell you this.
So the weak Colorado defense, because that's what it is. And you're going to struggle against teams like Dallas, who are really, really big and physical down low. And they did. They absolutely did.
He was poor that series as well. He just was. He was. So, shockingly enough, Vancouver has done what they've done against Edmonton with, what is it? Is this the second or the third string goalie they have in net, Grumpy, this series?
Well, no, Edmonton is going back to Skinner tonight.
No, Vancouver, Grumpy.
Second string.
This is a second string goalie in for that. Okay.
Seelovs. Yeah.
Seelovs. Again, I don't think he's a great goalie either, but they're just, I'll tell you one thing. Edmonton needs to determine what they're going to do, because the way their team is currently constituted is not good enough to win themselves a Stanley Cup.
They're like a 3-4 player team, right? You got 2 of the top 5 players in the world on your team. They don't play any defense. $9.5 million, Darnell Nurse does not play any defense.
Correct.
Yep. Their goaltending, Skinner, is okay. You can win with Skinner, but You have to be really good defensively for him. He will be. He's playing tonight against Vancouver.
Yep.
But I think Vancouver's going to beat them. I don't know if it'll be tonight. I don't know if it'll be Game 7. I still think Vancouver's going to beat them.
Okay. And the kid, oh my God, I just, they've only, think about this. Edmonton and Vancouver only have totaled 8 total shots on net between both teams tonight.
Well, you know what they're saying? Run and gun. We don't want to get involved in the run and gun game.
No, especially not with Edmonton. Absolutely not. But yeah, that's where we currently are. Simple as that. We are just in a spot to where it's just like, simple as this. Pretty much every single series the favorite has won so far in the postseason. Florida was the favorite over Boston as well. The Rangers were the favorite over Carolina. You had Dallas is the favorite over Colorado, and who's the favorite, Edmonton or Vancouver? I don't remember which one's the favorite. It's Vancouver. Edmonton's the favorite over Vancouver, right?
But Vancouver had the better record in the regular season.
Did they?
Yep.
This game 6 is at Rogers Arena, so Game 7 will be in Edmonton.
It's in Edmonton.
Are you sure?
I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure.
Okay. Fair enough, Grumpy. So again, pretty much the favorites have been winning left and right. Simple as that.
I think what you're seeing in the NHL, you've seen teams have figured out how to deal with free agency. They're signing players at younger ages, like I've been espousing for years since we started this show. Sign younger guys earlier to give them big deals and get them through their whole career or the prime of their career. Overpay them when they're young, more than they're worth, and you're going to get the most productive years. How many big free agents hit the market now who aren't in their 30s? Not too many. Not too many. So you're seeing teams are staying together more. You're seeing a real haves and have-nots. Just look at the playoff picture. The Eastern Conference, you have maybe 6 teams that are any good, and the rest are all trash. Every single one of them. The West, 7, maybe 8. Maybe you could say 8. Probably 7 or 8. And the rest are garbage.
And just to clarify, you mentioned free agency. I don't necessarily think it's free agency. I just think it's better management of contracts.
That's free agency. You don't let guys get free to free agency.
For the guys that you own the rights, technically they don't get the free agency. Just to clarify, I think when you have guys who are young, talented players, they're signing them and locking them up to long-term contracts and deals, which makes drafting even more important than it's ever been in the history of professional sports. When you're able to lock in guys, well, I won't say that. Before the free agency time period, I guess, you always own the rights. But since this has been over the last, I guess, 2-3 decades, the most important time period to be able to draft efficiently. That simple. Because you're signing these guys to long-term deals that you draft, and usually the good players, you don't let them walk to free agency or you don't trade their rights away.
Right. That's what I said. And just on a personal note, today is the Warden's birthday. So I don't know if we want people to sing happy birthday to the Warden or what. I have no idea.
Well, X didn't even show up to work today, so tough to make sure we're getting through all that, Grumpy. And now you're just gonna have a whole bunch of happy birthday Warden comments that's gonna be tougher for me to siphon through all the comments as I'm doing the show today. So thank you for that one, Grumpy.
The Warden's unnecessary to sing happy birthday to her.
It's necessary.
Said unnecessary.
Is the Warden still awake?
She just went upstairs and slammed the door.
Oh. Are you being too loud, grumpy old man, for the Warden? You sometimes wake her up from her slumber.
No, she heard me mention about the birthday thing.
Oh, gosh. Well, happy birthday to the Warden. I do want to talk about, before we start getting into the big meat and potatoes of the podcast, right, which is, do rebuilds work? Rick Rock says, hi, gang. What are your thoughts on Maxim Tsyplakov? Big physical ringer with a decent shot, but it's hard to say if these Ruskies will pan out over here. One man's Kirill Petrov is another man's Anatoly Golashev. Yes, let's go ahead and take a dive into that, Grumpy. Did you have a chance to see the Lamanites are terming it as Lou's latest masterpiece, or masterclass is what they're calling it, signing Maxim Tsyplakov? What do you think about that, Grumpy?
Okay. It's a 1-year deal, vet minimum. Who cares? He's going to be fighting for a spot on the fourth line. Okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. It's a 1-year deal. You know, how good could he possibly be if the Islanders were the team that got him? And it's a 1-year deal at vet minimum. It means, you know what it tells me? What's the one thing he can't do?
Well, it's not, it's not vet minimum. They signed him to an entry-level contract. So still, right, after this year, let's say things don't work out, he's still an RFA owned by the team. So they didn't sign him to a vet minimum contract. They signed him to a entry-level deal on a 2-way contract is what
it's a 1-year deal.
That's correct. Well, the reason they signed a 1-year entry level, now he didn't have to sign an entry level. Oh, fair disclosure, he didn't have to sign an entry level deal. He could have signed just, hey, I'm going to go ahead and sign a normal contract. But I'm going to let you know something. If the maximum bid for a guy like this was entry level deal being paid $950, do not read too much into the hype that everybody in the brother's mother was trying to get him, right? Because everybody's saying 14 teams were lining up to get Maxim Tsyplakov. Well, what they mentioned later on in the article is 14 teams showed interest from a Skype call to an in-person meeting. Well, I'll tell you this much. If you just have a Skype call, I just look at that as maybe just a team doing their due diligence.
That's right. That's right.
So, like, it's tough to say what the actual interest of this guy is. And I'm going to let you know something. Myself, just like every other Islander fan out there, I have watched 0 Maxim Tsyplakov games, absolutely 0, and nobody, maybe except Nicole, watches any KHL games on a regular basis and saying, I'm watching for my boy Maxim Tsyplakov. Because here's the thing, before Friday or Thursday, whenever he signed, nobody had a damn clue who this guy was in Islanders Nation, and really anybody. So it's like, I hope this is a very low risk, potential for reward move. I am happy with it, but I'm not going to be like, man, this is fantastic, this is great. I have no idea who he is as a player, just like everybody out there has no idea who this guy is as a player. They've never watched him play.
I sent you a Twitter thing which showed a nice little video of what he's done. I don't know if you want to put that up.
I don't, just because I'm not sure how restrictive the KHL is and if they'll take our stream down. So I will not show that.
It's not somebody from the KHL who put that out there.
No, if it's KHL film and footage. It's from him playing in the KHL, right, Grumpy? I looked at it earlier. This is film from him in the KHL making.
How did he look on that? Since you don't want to show the people film, how did he look?
He looked strong. He looked strong on the puck. He looked like he was. It was a good power forward move, and he got a good shot off, and he scored. I thought it was a nice move. But yeah, go ahead, Grump.
The one thing he can't do is skate, so he fits right in with the vast majority of this team.
Yes, I've been seeing people send out reports. Oh, he's a great skater. He didn't look. There's only one clip. I'm not going to judge a guy off of one clip. I have no idea how he's as a skater.
He can't skate. He can't skate. He's like most of our prospects can't skate. So great. Like I said, if he's a guy that you can play, give you a little bit of a physical presence, he's a big kid, gives you a little bit of physical presence on the fourth line, that's fine.
Well, I don't think they're bringing him to be a fourth liner.
Well, that's what he's going to be. He's not going to be anything more.
I can see maybe a bottom 6. I could see. I don't know. I don't know what he's going to project to be. I have no. You can't say that, Grumpy. We've never seen him play.
If the guy can't skate, he can't play on the first line. He has a breakout season in the Russian league at the age of 25. Yeah. Okay, how good could he possibly be? Because you know what? If he was good, if he could skate, and he has the hands that everyone says he has, now supposedly he's got good hands, right? Okay. Well, how come his game didn't translate at all and no one showed any interest in him till he played in the KHL for 7 years? I mean, there's a reason. He's just a guy, and I'm not opposed to them signing him.
It could be one of two things, right? He's either a guy who just had an unbelievable season in a contract year, because that was the last year he had signed for Moscow Spartak. So could have been a guy just having a great season in a contract season, or maybe at 25 years old, he's finally put the pieces together, and he's a guy who is going to be a successful player, and this is his new normal. At the age of 25, he's found his game. Those are the two options. I don't know. I've never watched him play. You've never watched him play. Nobody in this universe and Islanders and the Islanders country has ever watched him play a full game, so we have no idea. This is a guy, though. Here it is. He is a very low risk, potential for reward player. Best case scenario for him, I think, probably is he makes the team. He has a roster spot. He plays every night. That would be a successful signing in my book. Anything else is just icing on the cake at that. Wouldn't you agree, Grumpy?
Yeah, like I said, everything that I've read on him are people who say, you know what, he's not a good skater. Period. I mean, okay. Here's the thing. I'm not opposed
The
to signing
articles you
guys.
sent me were exactly contradictory of that.
Well, I'm just
Go ahead.
telling you that's not true. Here's the thing. Again, I'm not opposed to taking a guy like that. It's certainly no risk, really. $950,000, big whoop. It's a two-way deal. How
Right.
good could he be if he's on a two-way deal, right? That's all I'm just saying is if he was that good, he would have gotten a one-way deal. So it wouldn't surprise me if he starts the year off in Bridgeport and then maybe comes up. He will have to show that his game translates to the NHL from the Russian league. But you know what? Don't expect anything more than a bottom
Or
six guy.
Or what probably happens if he's not going to play in Bridgeport. Why the hell? Why would he come here to play in Bridgeport? What he would do is that he wouldn't show up. He would refuse to show up, and then we would terminate his contract if he refuses to report. So now here's the thing. That's happened to other players that have played in the KHL for us. Remember Yan Kovar. And again, I'm not saying he's a Yan Kovar, an Anatoly Golashev, a Kirill Kabanov. I'm not saying he's any of those guys. I don't know. But I will say this, right? Like, he could obviously, if you send him down to Bridgeport, he could just refuse to report. And then he could go ahead and then, for example, like with Yan Kovar, we signed him to a 1-year deal. And then the Boston Bruins signed him. And the Boston Bruins sent him down there to Providence to play with the Providence Bruins. And he played 10 games down there in the A. And then he said, F it, I'm going back home to Europe. So that's a possibility too. That's why I said if he just makes the roster and he plays a role for us, I look at that as a successful signing. But I'm not going to get like all hip hooray, this is the greatest thing ever, because there's a lot of different ways it can transpire, and I'm not getting my hopes up for some guy I've never seen play. Not going to do
Would it not be fair to say that the Islanders don't feel he's a lock to make the roster because they gave him a two-way deal?
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with you. I think right. Probably what will happen is he'll start off the year as a healthy scratch. Because what is he going to, unless he blows things away in training camp, he's probably going to start off as a healthy scratch. Do you see him usurping Simon Holmstrom for a spot? How about Hudson Fasching? We have no idea what he's going to bring to the table. None at all. And if he doesn't immediately say, hey, I'm playing so great, I demand a roster spot, maybe he's a healthy scratch. Or maybe after time of being healthy scratch, then he's waived and he's sent down. Because what are they going to do? Send him up there and not let him play for games and games? Then he's going to be like, F it, I'm going back home. Because if he gets waived to Bridgeport, right, his salary gets reduced because it's an entry-level deal from like $950K a year to $82,000 a year. He's not going to say, yeah, let me go ahead and take a pay cut, because he's earning more than that in the KHL. Simple as that. He's not going to say, let me take a pay cut to play away from home in a second-tier league. He won't do that.
Okay. All I'm saying is everything I've read, he's a bottom six guy who maybe can do a little bit of scoring, which the bottom six didn't score at all for us this year, basically. So, and he's maybe a little bit physical because of his frame, but he's not a good skater. Okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with them signing a guy like that. It's not a ridiculous 7-year deal like we see some of the other clowns on this team make. Okay, he signed a 1-year, two-way, $950,000 a year contract. No problem with it. Maybe he surprises. Probably not. Who knows? When was the last time we've had a European prospect come over here and set the world on fire? It's been quite a while.
And the ones that potentially have the ability to do that, we trade away. Like with Aturatu. And, like, remember Robin Salo, how high of hopes there were for Robin Salo. There's a lot of guys that come over from Europe that have really high hopes, but for whatever reason, it seems like they fizzle out for us. Hopefully this one's different, because man, oh man, wouldn't it be nice to be like, we wake up on Christmas morning, we're like, wow, this Maxim Tsyplakov guy, he's pretty good. And he's a consistent player for us. That would be nice. But I'm like, it's the unlikely scenario, but it's possible. I'm not gonna say that's the most likely scenario, because it's just not.
All I'm saying is no problem signing him.
Yes.
I just want fans to pump the brakes a little bit. Everybody the Islanders signs does not turn out to be, the next Connor McDavid. Matter of fact,
this guy's going to be the next Kuzmankov, Grumpy. That's what people are saying out there.
He's probably going to be, just the guy who plays on the bottom six. Maybe chips in a couple of goals. That's what he'll be. In most probability, right?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
And I hope that. I look at that as a success. If you get a guy that you pick up off the scrap heap, or you pick up as a guy that is a free agent that's a solid bottom sixer on on an entry level deal, that's fine. I'm fine with that. That's great. Now there's something before we get into the topic of conversation. Do rebuilds work? Larry, was it Larry Scott, Grumpy, you wanted to talk about today?
Larry Brooks.
Larry Brooks was talking. He wrote an article in the New York Post.
He's a long time Ranger. Right now, he writes for the New York Post, but he's a long time Ranger fan. I don't know if he does like I think he does NHL overall, but he's a true blue Ranger fan. He absolutely is. But there was an article he put out, and it was talking about the gentleman we just discussed, and everything. All of his bullet points were exactly the things that we've been saying for years and years and years. And you're seeing the mainstream media, the cartel now has bought in to the TJ and the grumpy old man, what we've been saying for years because it was so obvious.
Well, I don't think he's not part of the cartel.
Well, he hates the Islanders and he loves the Rangers, but he's a media cartel member. He absolutely is.
He's part of the Rangers cartel.
That's for certain.
Not the Islanders, but continue.
Yeah. But it was one little interesting little tidbit. He did mention how Lamoriello is signing back guys who've never won anything to long-term deals, which was the direct opposite of what he did in Jersey, where guys who had won cup after cup after cup, he was always lowballing them all the time. That's something that I've mentioned on this show.
I want to address a little bit. He was bringing up the question. It wasn't like he brought up the question, why was he not signing guys like that to long-term deals? He was short-term contracts. He was lowballing them exactly as you said. But why, with the Islanders, for players who have never won anything, is he giving away long-term deals? It was more like a question. I think it's a good question.
You realize I was getting to that. Okay. You don't need to cut off my thought to finish what I was saying. So, well, that's exactly what it was, which I was getting to. So, yes, I thought that was very interesting. And he also said that this group benefited from the fact that they were COVID years and they have not done anything in non-COVID years, like we've been saying for years now. Yeah. And he's not wrong. And he said, that the Islanders absolutely have to retool this team or rebuild or whatever. So things need to change.
Yeah.
Is the old man capable of it? I have no idea.
He said, again, he mentioned it was quite clear and obvious. The Islanders under Lou Lamoriello, if it was not a truncated COVID season, they've never had more than 5 postseason wins in an 82-game year under Lou Lamoriello. And that's the truth, too. It just kind of makes you think like, okay, yeah, that's a trend that I noticed that's ongoing, right? We can't rely upon there to be shortened seasons or 50 however many game years or 72-game seasons and then a 2-month break before the postseason anymore. It's just not going to happen. You're going to be playing 82-game seasons, regular seasons, and then a postseason. And under Lou Lamoriello, we've never won more than 5 postseason games after an 82-game regular season. I don't see that changing anytime soon. All right. You hear the rumor, the Islanders are big on Nikolai Ehlers. They're hard in the race for Ehlers.
Okay. Would Nikolai Ehlers help this team in the short run? He absolutely would. You have to pay him because he's going to be UFA after this year.
Yep. But and you're going to have to give up assets and a first-round pick probably for him.
And one thing that they did mention, I don't know if it was Stefan Rosner or not, he mentioned that the Islanders did ask if what's the new guy's name?
Who?
The guy they just signed.
Maxim Tsyplakov.
They did ask him if he could play center. So maybe it means, yeah, he can play center. Maybe he can play 4th line center, slide Casey up to play 3rd line center. Maybe they move JG Pajot.
That's what people are espousing, right? In order to bring in any sort of cap hit coming back, they're going to have to get rid of a cap hit away. Anders Lee, with his contract and his ability, probably you're going to have to give up assets just to get rid of him. I think Jean-Gabriel Pageau has some value, so I think he can be traded without having to eat his contract, and he frees up cap space in order for you to go ahead and do some maneuvering. So, yeah, I did think that was interesting, too. They asked if Tsyplakov could play center. Maybe they slide Matt Barzal to center. They want to make sure they have center depth. It's something that's been extremely important to this team for forever and ever and ever under Lou Lamoriello. So I think that's what they want to make sure if they trade away a guy like Jean-Gabriel Pageau, and let's say they bring in a guy like Ehlers, right? That's trading a center for a winger. They want to make sure they've got still that center depth.
I you know what? I'm going to take a wait and see approach, see if we're going to do anything in the offseason.
Yeah.
Would Nikolai Ehlers make the team more entertaining to watch? Absolutely, because he'd fit nicely on that number one line. Bo Horvat in his exit interview said that he really hoped they weren't going to have a revolving door at the left wing spot like they did last year. I mean, when you're saying that, guess what that means? Everybody that they put up there sucked and couldn't do the job. That's what he wanted to say. They need somebody who's better. Now, Nikolai Ehlers would make them better, but that's going to be another contract that you're going to have to sign a guy to 7 or 8 years. I mean, he's going to be a UFA, so you got to pay to keep him.
Yeah.
I think his game will age better than others because he's more of a skater type as opposed to a grinder type. But I like Nikolai Ehlers. So, yeah. I mean, I think it would make the Islanders more fun to watch. So even if we're not going to do anything, at least they're more fun to watch in the regular season. I just put it to you that way.
Okay. Let's go ahead and jump into the topic of discussion. 50 minutes in now. Do rebuilds work? Right? Yeah. That has been something we've been always over and over and over again. Rebuilds don't work. Rebuilds don't work. How many times do we see that? Now, I think it's important to preface this, right? We 100% understand that not every single rebuild works. And the likelihood of a rebuild working is probably more unlikely than likely. It just is. The likelihood that you may have to rebuild during a rebuild, that's also a possibility. Rebuilds are not guaranteed science. I feel like I've got to give like disclosures, like these million-long disclosures that they give. But rebuilds are not always a guaranteed thing. But I firmly believe in the position that we'll take and prove is that in order to win a Stanley Cup, you have to be able to successfully navigate a rebuild to launch and catapult yourself into a Stanley Cup position or a Stanley Cup contender. It doesn't always, it's not every single year a team always wins that went through a massive rebuild. That's not always the truth. The majority of teams that win a Stanley Cup in the last decade plus are teams that went through a massive rebuild, though.
Yeah.
And you know, when you start looking at the Stanley Cup champions, and we'll break them down here in a second, you'll notice that a lot of those teams had to go through massive rebuilds in order to acquire top-tier talent, and then they're in a spot to where they can compete for a cup.
And you're drafting guys who are 18 years old. So you got to look at 7, 8 years down the line from when they're making those picks to say, okay, hey, did it work? That's what you have to look at. And I don't think people do. I think people maybe look like the NFL. Oh, okay, well, team bottoms out. You know, they sign a bunch of free agents. They get a bunch of rookies coming in, and they get a great quarterback, and the team is up there and running. No, not true, because the guys are a lot older. A lot of draft picks do flame out because you're talking about 18-year-old kids as opposed to guys who are 21, 22. It's a big difference. When Mike Bossy came in, he led the Q in scoring, and he still went 15th because he couldn't play physicality. But that was what he was drafted when he was 20. Where would he have gone if he was 18 years old? He probably wouldn't even have been drafted till maybe the 5th or 6th round.
The other
guys, you can't. They're still boys. The vast majority of them at 18 years old as opposed to 21, 22.
The position we're going to take too is, for most point, the draft is a crapshoot. It is. Higher selections, you would expect a higher probability that they're going to come out and turn into NHLers. You just would expect that because the earlier the selection, ideally you have the cream of your crop and more available players. You're also going to find that some players drafted in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round can become consistent NHLers and very valuable members to teams. It's just the case. Now, the position we're going to take is, it's like almost like a lottery, right? In order to win the lottery, though, you have to have at least the ticket. Under Lou Lamoriello, we've been consistently trading away. First-round picks has been, that's a given. We haven't had a first-round pick the last 4 years, and if we're going after a guy like Ehlers, maybe it's going to be 5 years in a row without a first-round pick. We're trading away second-round picks, too, and third. We're just trading away draft picks willy-nilly.
The one thing I will say, if you're going to continue to trade away first-round draft picks, you have to have a scouting staff who's capable of unearthing some gems in later rounds. The Islanders' scouting staff has not done that.
That's correct.
You look at teams like Dallas, a prime example, the Kings. There were certain teams that They draft Carolina. They are really able to get guys who produce at the NHL level who are drafted in later rounds. The Islanders don't have that. So I mean, I think it's the same scouting staff that they've had in place forever, from when Garth Snow was there. Nothing has really changed. I think that's another thing that, if you want the team to get better and you're going to continually trade away first round draft picks, you have to have a scouting staff who's able to unearth some of those gems in the later rounds. And we have not been able to do that. It's why we have the worst farm system in the NHL.
Okay. Getting back to where we want to bring this to, right? I don't disagree with you. If you're going to only have selections from 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7th round picks, you're going to have to hit on them. Just likely that's very low. I'm not going to gamble on it and say, hey, we could just ignore the top 2 rounds every year and say that's a recipe for success, because it's not. You're going to see it's not. When you're drafting players in all different rounds, you have to have enough lottery selections in order to go ahead and hit it. You're going to have to load up on draft picks. You're going to want a better scouting staff, simple as that. But the reason we're bringing this up, right, not to go hammer about drafting, right, we're going to look at the last few Stanley Cup winners and see, hey, was their core drafted during a rebuild? Because that is what you're going to notice through the majority of these Stanley Cup winners. The Vegas Golden Knights, an expansion team, their core was not drafted through a rebuild. They never had a rebuild. They've only been a team for 4 or 5 years now, Grumpy. They're a different scenario. 5 years, right? They're a different scenario. I will say they do not apply to this rule, but I think in order to look at Vegas, you have to say this is a team that went through an expansion draft, and it was when the years where the expansion draft heavily favored the team that was going through the expansion draft. But they do not apply in this heavy rebuild to win a Stanley Cup scenario. They don't.
Think about what Vancouver did, though.
Vegas,
I'm sorry. They wound up signing or through the expansion draft, picking a lot of players that they wound up moving to get more draft picks, and they've done it like that. So they've traded the accumulated draft picks that they had. You're like, okay, well, we're not going to, and same thing with Seattle. You want us to take a certain player, well, you have to give us a draft pick. That's what they did. And they were able to take those draft picks and move them to get better in the immediate. It's a little bit different.
I'll just take it with Vegas, right? We're not a team that went through an expansion draft. Their scenario and how they win the cup is not applicable to us. Okay. It's not. It's just the reason I'm mentioning they don't apply in this scenario. We're not a team going through an expansion draft. We're not a team to where the inception of the team was 5 years ago and every single player we had has a maximum being on this team in the organization for 5 years. It's just not the case. If you want to say, right, you could say, okay, that one counts against us. That's fine. It's still going to come out the same way the results have. The majority of teams that win a Stanley Cup have to go through a massive rebuild in order to win. The Colorado Avalanche.
Yep.
Well, when you look at Colorado and when they won, what do you notice about Colorado? All the top tier players on their team, your McKinnons, your Rantanens, your Landeskog's when they won that cup,
Mikhail
McCarrs. Yep. All of those players, what do you notice? All the top tier players were all early selections by the Colorado Avalanche.
That's right.
It helped them, right? They were also savvy where they were able to dupe an old general manager, giving away Devon Taves and giving him away for 2 second-round picks. They were able to dupe an old GM through that process. That was pretty cool for them at least. But, you start looking at it, their team, right, was absolutely built through a rebuild. Simple as that. Wouldn't you agree, Grumpy?
Yes, absolutely. They're a team that built through a rebuild. So there's one right there, 2022. Tampa Bay Lightning, absolutely.
Well, hold on. Give me 1 second because we're just going to show it for people who maybe, oh no, they didn't build through rebuild. I'm just going to show, right? Just to show the players that have done it, right? The players, the contributors, and what they had to do, right? And now here's the thing. When they were legit, look at that 2022 year, the year they won the draft. They were not afraid to trade away draft selections, but it panned out for them, right? They wound up winning it all. Simple as that. But you start looking, right? Like even Bowen Byram, right? They said, gotcha. We think that it's important for us to bring in a guy like Casey Middlestat. They traded away the 4th overall selection. They traded away the 16th overall pick after a while for Alex Newhook. They just have. Is Newhook still on that team, Grumpy, or is he traded?
No.
He was traded. Yeah, he was traded to Montreal. I thought that was the case. But when you start looking, right, like Cale Makar, 4th overall selection, right? Tyson Jost, he's not with the team anymore. Mika Rantanen, right? 10th overall pick. Rantanen is a pretty damn special player.
Just look at where they're picking.
Yep.
Those are teams that have bottomed out and are in rebuild. Just need to look where they're picking, right?
McKinnon, first overall selection. They hit on that one, I'd say. Landeskog, right? Now he's been banged up this year too. Did he play this year at all, or was he out the entire year?
Did not play at all.
Yeah. But I'm like,
it's been 12 years since he was drafted.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And now, like Landeskog, right? Like he's 31 years old now. He's in his 30s, right? His career may be towards the tail end. But you look at it like all of these players, their core was built through draft picks where they hit and top tier players. Like McKinnon, right? That's a guy, if he plays long enough, you could say maybe that guy's a Hall of Fame guy.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Absolutely.
And you look at a guy like Rantanen, right? His career's early yet, but I'm like, 27 years old, you've got a total of 617 points in 570 games. Maybe that's a guy who's knocking on the doorstep. And you look at a guy like Cale Makar, right? He's already won himself a few of those, a few Norris trophies, right? He's a guy who might be working his way into the Hall of Fame. They hit on their draft picks, right? So in order to rebuild successfully, you have to, number one, A, have the draft picks, and B, you're going to see hit on the draft picks. But it's possible to win a cup through a rebuild. Absolutely, it's possible. So Colorado, we've confirmed. The next team, Grumpy, who won back-to-back Stanley Cups, Grumpy, you wouldn't believe it, the Tampa Bay Lightning, Grumpy.
Absolutely
they
went through a rebuild.
Cups in 3 years.
Absolutely went through the rebuild.
Yep.
We don't even need to talk about them.
Yep.
Everyone knows.
Just a list, right? Stamkos drafted through the rebuild. Hedman drafted through the rebuild. Braden Point drafted through the rebuild.
Actually, can you bring up their draft record?
That's the reason we're doing this, is to show, Grumpy, that sometimes they're not always the first round picks, but you have to draft well later on too.
That's right.
There's a reason I want to bring up every single one of these. But yes, I'll get Tampa's.
Yeah, I mean, but what you're going to see is Stamkos, number 1 pick overall. Victor Hedman, number 2 pick overall. But then you're Kuznetsov was what, a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Braden Point, 3rd round pick. The Islanders have been unable to identify talent like that in the lower rounds. They just haven't been able to.
Even like Cirelli, guys who produce like that, who are valuable, but 3rd round pick through Cirelli. Right? That's a nice selection there for them. Tony DeAngelo. I forgot Tony DeAngelo was a 1st round pick. But Braden Point that year, 3rd round pick for Braden Point. Jonathan Drouin. What did they do? Well, Jonathan Drouin didn't work out for it. They were still 2013, 3rd overall pick. Still during the rebuild, but they said, yeah, wasn't even showing up on screen. Yeah, Jonathan Drouin doesn't fit for us. We're going to trade him away, a player for Sergachev. Right? They said didn't fit for us, but you still had the assets, so you could go ahead and trade him away for another young and valuable asset. And was it Montreal who gave up the wrong player in Sergachev? Simple as that. But you start looking, right? Vasilevsky, 19th overall selection. I mean, he absolutely panned out. And Kucherov, 2nd round pick, right? Palat, 7th round, right? So you got to draft well. And here's the thing, right? They had some misses. Brett Connolly. That's a miss at the 6th overall, but you have some misses in the draft. You will.
They got Radko Gudas in the 3rd round, right?
Yep. Victor Hedman, 2nd overall selection. Steven Stamkos, 1st overall selection, right? Like you have to go. They're a team that went through a massive rebuild. Yep. A lot of the core players that were on that team, like your Gudas, like your Kucherov, like your Braden Points, they were all drafted through this rebuild.
Can I just say one thing about the retool rebuild thing?
Yes.
If you're going to do a retool, that means that your team was really good and was winning. Correct. That's when you go through a retool. If your team's never won anything, it's what are you retooling to? To be
get back to maybe we can make an Eastern Conference Finals.
I mean, you weren't good enough. Those are the teams that retool. Are teams like you see Tampa trying to do retools. Is it going to work for them? No, it's not, because all their guys are getting older. But I understand. You saw teams that were retooling. Teams like Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Washington who won in 2018. That was a team that retooled on the fly. And it took 5 years of Barry Trotz there for that put them over the hump. They were a team who retooled on the fly. Pittsburgh, they were a team that was retooling on the fly because they had Sidney Crosby, right? And Malkin and Letang. You see why teams did that. The Chicago Blackhawks, 2015 and whatever, that was a full rebuild for them. And remember, when Pittsburgh won the first time, that was a total off a rebuild with Crosby and Malkin in back-to-back years at number 1. Or I think Malkin was number 2, the year that Ovechkin was number 1. But those were full rebuilds to start.
Yeah.
And then once you hit that level, you're trying to keep it at that level for as long as possible. That's when you do a retool.
So St. Louis Blues, 2019, they won a cup, right? So just to show on that side, did St. Louis Blues go through a rebuild? Well,
Yeah.
we can look at it and say, yes, absolutely they did. And now here's the thing. As we've mentioned before, you're going to have players you select through the rebuild that pan out and players that don't. Right? Like now was Oshie. Oshie was already traded off of the team when they won the cup, right, Grumpy?
Yes.
And so was Ben Bishop. Was he already with Tampa by the time they won that cup?
He was with Tampa. I don't think he was with them.
So when you look at, right, like you start looking,
Ryan Reeves, Eric Johnson, first overall pick.
Well, here's the thing, right? Like Eric Johnson never panned out. They traded Eric Johnson. They said, see you later, Eric Johnson. He never panned out for him. But guess what? That David Perron, right?
But look at the numbers where they're picking. 13.
They're drafting players every single year, and they're hitting on their draft picks. And guess what? Lars Eller wasn't with the team. Neither was David Perron. But like you look at some of these players that were not with the team when they won the cup. They used these selections to trade. This is not the Chalmers you're thinking of. This is not Nicholas Chalmers. This is Simon Chalmers. But no games played. But guess what? They said, not part of the solution. We're moving away from guys like that. Alex Pietrangelo,
number 4,
was part of the solution. Jake Allen. 4. He was, guess what? He was helpful there too. He wasn't the guy. It was right. He was the backup, but he helped through that time period. And you start looking like, okay, gotcha. Not right. 2009, we didn't hit on anything. 2010, well, Jaden Schwartz absolutely was a part of the solution, and so was Tarasenko. Right. Both first-round picks that they were able to select through that.
And look at where they're picking. Those are teams. They're not making the playoffs those years.
Here's our goalie, Jordan Binghamton, who got extremely hot, who helped them win a cup.
Didn't have a first-round pick that year.
Yep, but guess what? They still have draft selections. 3 second-round picks. It's all about having draft picks.
Long story short, when you're picking, for the most part, in the top 10, top 15, your team is not very good. If you're not making the playoffs, you're a team that's in a rebuild.
Yep. Simple as that. And you look at it like they're gathering as many picks as they can. And they're hating on some of these, right? Barbashev. Here you go. There's Robbie Fair. Yep.
Vince Dunn with Seattle right now.
Yep, they let him move. They let him move there. But it's like, okay, gotcha. Now they trade away Tage Thompson, but Kyrou was a part of that team that won the cup as well. Guess what? You have to be. They went through a massive rebuild. They're bad for a while, and they picked up the best defenseman on that team, who was a cornerstone, Alex Pietrangelo, through that rebuild as well. They're a team that went through a rebuild. They accumulated as many draft picks as they possibly could, and they said, "Here we go. We're hitting the lottery. Hopefully, we can go ahead and hit." Guess what? They hit on them, and they wound up, and some of the players weren't a part, but they used those pieces to trade for other players that they thought were a better fit. But in order to be a tradable asset, you're either a prospect, you're a draft pick, or you're somebody who's already been very successful in the league. You have to be one of those 3 things in order to have value. But yes, getting back, yes. So the Blues, they also went through one. Simple as that. We're getting back to it here, though. Like the Washington Capitals, right? They're the next team that won themselves a Stanley Cup. So right now, just to keep record, Colorado, Tampa twice, in St. Louis. So 4 out of the last 5 cups we've been here. Washington Capitals, Grumpy.
They were a retool for certain.
I'd say they went through a rebuild / retool. Sure.
No, they were a retool. Absolutely, they were good for a lot of years and couldn't get over the hump, so they just augment. I understand it from their perspective. You got Ovechkin on team. Pittsburgh, the same thing. At the second iteration where they won the back-to-back cups, they were adding pieces, and they've been adding ever since, trying to retool to get back to that level, and they couldn't do it. Now, initially, Pittsburgh was a rebuild when they won their first cup.
These teams, no. Again, this is why we're doing this. You're misconstruing the conversation we had earlier, and I'll bring it back to that. These teams acquired their core through a rebuild. They did. The core that won a Stanley Cup, they acquired through the rebuild. Washington acquired their core through a rebuild. Your guys like your Ovechkins, your guys like your Nicholas Backstroms, your guys like your John Carlson, those are all acquired through the rebuild.
Okay,
those are the top tier players on that team who were acquired through a rebuild that helped them win the cup.
Okay,
they were.
But it was 14 years from when they drafted Ovechkin and he won a cup? I mean, they were trying to augment.
Kuznetsov was drafted in 2010. That was a team that was still going ahead. We weren't just throwing away all the picks. They were still having draft picks. They weren't just saying willy-nilly we're throwing it away.
Okay.
Right? Like Carl Alsner, right? He was part of the team when they won a cup. Nicholas Backstrom drafted 4th overall. Varlamov drafted 23rd overall. You look at these guys, they went through the rebuild. Yeah. Ovechkin now was drafted
23rd overall.
2004.
23rd overall means that your team is pretty good. When you're drafting 23rd overall, your team was a playoff team.
They also had the 4th overall pick that year too. Okay. So they were acquiring as many draft picks as possible, Grumpy, as we're noticing here. And through that rebuild, some of them hit, some of them don't, and it doesn't always immediately result in a cup.
Long story short, because I think we're beating this to death.
It's the same thing with the Blackhawks. They acquired their core.
That's right.
They
were rebuilt.
Through a rebuild. Same thing with the Kings.
Kings rebuild.
Same exact thing. You're right. They went through a rebuild. You got your Dustin Browns, your Anze Kopitars, your Jonathan Quicks. They went through a rebuild. They acquired all these Drew Doughty's, all these top-tier players through a rebuild and won themselves a cup. Right. Same exact thing with the Blackhawks. Same thing with the Penguins. They got their Chris Letang's, their Malkins, their Crosby's, their Marc-Andre Fleury's, all through a rebuild, and they won themselves the cup.
But I'm just saying those particular cups, not after they won that first cup and they dropped down a little bit, that's what I consider a retool. Okay, we have this core. We're going to start moving first. We're going to start moving draft picks to
who are you talking about?
Pittsburgh, in particular, Pittsburgh.
Well, yeah, they won multiple cups.
Okay, but look at what I'm saying is the last 2 iterations of Pittsburgh cups, I thought those were retools to get them to the top after their first cup win.
Who was the core composed of? What was the core? That's what we're talking about. The core. Everybody talks about the core. In order to win a cup, the core has to be solid. Who was Pittsburgh's core during that 2016 and 2017?
I don't care because that core didn't win anything after what? 2000. When did they win the cup before 2016? When did they win the cup?
2009.
2009. They were retooling after that because they weren't winning. So what they did was they retooled to get back to that level. And I understand that because their core was locked in from the rebuild of 2009. And
it doesn't disprove the point that I made. Maybe you didn't listen to it earlier. You didn't listen to it again.
I just think you don't know what you're talking about when you say it like that.
All of these teams that win a cup, majority of them establish a strong core. And here's the thing you'll notice too. A lot of these teams have multiple Hall of Fame players on this team that they gather through the draft. They build the core that way. Okay. Some of them win cups early. Some of them, it takes a little bit of time. Some of them, you establish a good core. You're a strong team. You're very close. And you have to retool a little bit on the road. But the majority of the work and the majority of the top tier players are assembled through a rebuild.
Okay.
That is correct.
I'm just saying the Pittsburgh Cups of 16 and 17 were built through, were retools after the 2009 team that won. And that was the core was the 2009 group. Absolutely, with Crosby and Malkin. But after that, when they didn't win for a few years, they were retooling on the fly to add to those guys who had been there from the 2019. So that's why I feel those teams were retools.
You're forgetting Pittsburgh. Crosby missed. Listen, you're forgetting Crosby missed multiple seasons with the neck concussion. The thing was, they had the 8th overall draft pick. They were not making the postseason at time periods like that because Crosby was missing entire seasons. Remember, he missed 2 or 3 almost entire years with the neck concussion injury. They were at a time period where you're right, they didn't have a chance to win because Crosby, their best player, was not playing. Okay, simple as that. They assembled their core, and this is not wrong. This is verifiably true. They assembled their core, Grumpy Old Man, the Pittsburgh Penguins, through their draft, through their rebuild. Simple as that.
Every team's going to be drafting guys. A retool is when you hit the heights and you drop down. Are you blowing it up again and starting, or are you just retooling with the guys you have on the team? You don't even understand what the term means.
I do.
Retooling means you've got to the top. Pittsburgh got to the top. Okay, they had some years they weren't so.
They missed Crosby for 3 seasons. But
they still had the core. They still had the core from the first cup. Okay, and then
how do they establish the core from the first cup? Okay, you trying to say, oh, we're going to count the failed years under Pittsburgh when Crosby wasn't able to play? Again, I'd say Crosby probably best player we've seen in the last 2 decades, 3 decades.
But it
When you're
doesn't
missing
matter.
your
They
best
had all those
player,
guys
you're
from
not
that
going to
cup.
win.
They had all those guys from that first cup run. They didn't win for 7 years, regardless of the reason they didn't win, and they were retooling and adding. That's what Pittsburgh did. The first cup run was absolutely from a rebuild. After
We-
that, you were not in rebuild anymore.
We were
You're not in
agreeing.
rebuild. After you win a cup, you're not in rebuild.
We agree.
In the sense in the
We
story.
agree.
When you win a cup, you're not in a rebuild.
Listen, we agree their core was established through the rebuild, right? Thank you very much. We
Dude,
both agree on that.
After you win a cup,
was
you're not in a
established through
rebuild. If they would have torn it down and won
Core-
again 7 years later,
Was
then
their
you could say
core-
that's rebuild. It's a retool.
True or
Pittsburgh
false?
was the one
True or false?
Pittsburgh and
Was
Washington
their
were the two
core-
rebuild teams.
True or false? Was their core established through the rebuild? Was Crosby, was Malkin, was Letang?
But
Were
they
those
didn't
guys
win
actually-
anything. They had to add other pieces. They had to trade away first-round draft picks.
Was
to make
their
that team win
core
again 7 years later.
established through the rebuild? Yes
I'm just
or
going to say
no?
no. I'm going to
Because
say
you just
no.
fucking, you just
Absolutely
want to
not.
be. You're just
Because
stuck
they
in.
didn't
You're
tear
happy
it down.
with attention
They
again.
never tore it
Jeez.
down. They never tore it down. After winning the first cup, they did not tear it down. They were always trying to augment and add. It took them 7 years. The second two Pittsburgh Cups were because of a retool. The Washington Cup was because of a retool.
Look at
Okay, you can't wait 15 years and say, well, 14 years. Well, gosh, all these guys were drafted 14 years ago. They're from a rebuild. No, at some point in time, if you're not getting over the hump, you're adding and adding, trying to get over the top. When you win a cup, you're at the top. Anything after that is a retool unless you tear it all down. But those are the only two teams. Those two teams, the Pittsburgh and Washington, the only two in the last 15 years that did not get rebuilt through a rebuild. They were those two retooled. Everything else was a rebuild. But it was all because Pittsburgh in particular was because of their initial cup was a rebuild.
Okay, so you're just going to disagree with the premise of the statement then. Simple as this. The core was established through the rebuild. It was. You can shake your head all you want because you want to be
let's
right.
move on to something else because I can't listen to you anymore.
Alrighty, Grumpy. Core was established through the rebuild. Just to finish up here, the statement. Core was established through the rebuild. They had to augment with additional pieces to win cups later on down the road. Sure, they did. But their core and their top tier players, the biggest producers on that team, was established and gathered through the rebuild.
So if the New York Islanders win a Stanley Cup with Matt Barzell and Noah Dobson, that was a rebuild. That was off of a rebuild.
It was not.
That's what you're saying.
That's what they're not doing.
Our core.
Here's the thing. Hey, guess what? Newsflash. Beep, 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 beep. We're not winning a cup. We're not winning a cup anytime soon.
It was because that was off of a rebuild. It's not.
Well, if I woke up in a dream and the Islanders are still playing and had more than 3 postseason wins in the last 3 years, sure, then Grumpy, we can entertain that.
Okay.
But it's not close.
I agree with you that the Islanders should be in a rebuild, but Pittsburgh absolutely was a retool their second two cups. It was a retool off the 2009 Stanley Cup championship.
The core that was rebuilt.
It was a retool. You're adding to the core. You're adding to the core. That's what a retool is.
Listen, they won their first.
No, I'm not listening. Go on to something else.
Here we go. They won the cup originally through the rebuild. That's fine. Simple as that. Oh, look at Grumpy. He got upset. But they won originally the cup through the rebuild. Then they retooled, but they won that first cup through the rebuild.
That's what I said. Why you argue with me? That's exactly what I said.
Their core was still established in the rebuild.
It doesn't matter what the core was. They had to retool off the existing core.
We agree, and you're just fighting over stupid shit because you want to try to be right. You want to try to prove something wrong. Grumpy, simple as that. Core was established through the rebuild for both those teams. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's right. Except for Pittsburgh and Washington, that's correct.
You know what?
Second iteration of Pittsburgh and Washington. That's correct.
That's fine.
The Pittsburgh team, the Washington team was absolutely not from a rebuild 14 years earlier. Most of those guys were gone.
Believe it or not, the rebuild wasn't just 1 year. It was more than a 1 year rebuild.
It wasn't a rebuild. It was not a rebuild.
You're wrong.
Been at the top. Washington had been winning President's trophies for years and could not win a cup because Pittsburgh was knocking them off every year. They finally added the right pieces in a retool to put them over the top. That's the difference.
Their core was established.
I don't care about the core. You're just, I mean,
I do care about the core. People talk about this core. The reason I'm talking about the core, if you can't freaking plug the connections together, is because Lou Lamoriello says he believes in the core. The core is not good enough.
Okay, Washington never tore down. Pittsburgh never tore down after that first cup. They did not tear down. They added to it. Those are retools.
Core established through the rebuild. but they helped through
Every
additions.
every team's a rebuild. Then why don't you just say it that way? Because you're wrong. You're just
Not
wrong.
every team's a rebuild.
You're wrong. Every team is a rebuild because if they have core guys that they drafted, that's it.
I'd say this
You're
Islanders
wrong.
team
You're
is.
wrong.
I'd say this Islanders team is no longer through a rebuild. When did the Islanders last rebuild?
If they won a cup next year, all those guys were guys we drafted. Simon Holt was part of the core. That's absolutely.
Really?
That
All
was
those guys? Was Bo Horvat a guy we drafted? Was Kyle Palmieri a guy we drafted? Was Jean-Gabriel Pajot a guy we drafted?
Doesn't matter.
You start going down the list. You're like, oh shit, yeah.
It doesn't matter. It was a rebuild. Our core guys: Matt Barzell, Noah Dobson, Sorokin. Those are all guys that we drafted. Pelech, Pulak, absolutely. If we won with this group, that's because that was from a rebuild.
Yeah,
that's why your argument doesn't hold any water.
Listen, it's as simple as this. The top tier players we established, we don't look at when we were really bad. Look at those years. Michael Dale Cole's not with the team. Griffin, I know you don't care because you don't want to listen. You just want to just say what you want to say and just fucking not listen. That's what you want to do.
You're incapable of it.
That's what you want to do. You just don't want to talk about it. That's fine. All I'm going to say is this. We missed John Tavares. He was a piece during our rebuild. Where is he?
We moved him out, just like Colorado.
We didn't move him out. We didn't move him out. He walked for free. You're wrong. We didn't move him out. He walked for free. How about Michael Del Cole? Well, guess what? He no longer is playing. Griffin Reinhart. We moved him for the beat.
Teams miss on draft picks all the time.
We didn't miss on John Tavares.
But teams miss on draft picks all the
draft pick. They do. But guess what? Again,
you can't argue both sides of the street, which is what you're trying to do.
I'm not arguing both sides of the street.
Long story short, in order for
you to win a cup, and what do you notice with all these teams? With Chicago, well, guess what? Taves and Kane, those are Hall of Fame caliber guys. What do you notice with the Penguins? Evgeny Malkin, Crosby, and maybe Marc-Andre Fleury. Those are Hall of Fame caliber guys. And same thing with Crystal Tang. What are you going to say with Capitals?
The draft. When you're picking first in the draft, that's what happens.
Hit on the draft picks and go through rebuild. That's correct. It's always the same.
Let's move on. Move on.
Yeah. Okay. You want to start reading comments?
Yes.
Go ahead. Get to your
comments today. We're not doing a lot of comments today. I'm telling you right now.
I know, because Grumpy must be watching the game.
No, dude, because I can't listen to you.
Oh, Grumpy.
Which NHL team is most useless in the playoffs? It's the Islanders. Islanders, Maple Leafs, or Canes? It's the Islanders.
No.
Matthew D says, with the reports of Ehlers being out in Winnipeg, I would love him here, but for nothing more than the 18th overall pick and a money contract. Would love Nietzsche's. Don't think Carolina would trade him to us. Okay.
Are you upset because Edmonton's up 3-1? Is that what it is? Is that why
you know what? You know what's on? The basketball game is on. I'm not even watching hockey. Basketball games.
Oh my God. Okay.
And it's right now 81-73. Oklahoma City over Dallas. 3:29 to go in the third. Ehlers, if he's available, you want to give up another first-round draft pick? Okay. Like we mentioned at the top of the show, the Islanders at least be more fun to watch before they get beat in the first round by Carolina. Nietzsche's is going nowhere. Carolina's not letting him go. They're not dumb enough to let go of young players and keep old guys. They don't. You're going to see change in Carolina this year for certain, I feel.
They have to. Simple as that. How often can you continue to be considered, hey, we're cup favorites, and they continue to fail? They do. The expectation for them is Stanley Cup right now or bust. And they continue to bust year in and year out, and they have lackluster postseason after lackluster postseason. Something needs to change. You don't get to celebrate, hey, we make it into the postseason with a good regular season record, and we continue to fail in the postseason. That's not something you want to hang your hat on.
We spoke in the preseason. What was the Achilles heel for Carolina? It was the fact that they re-signed Ronta and Anderson and did not go after a legit goaltender, and it wound up costing them at the end. You need a top-flight goaltender. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Oh, you can put any goaltender in. No, that's not the way it works, because in the playoffs, you need a bona fide stud in net, somebody who can really produce. Carolina doesn't have it. 35-year-old goaltenders are not the answer. Retreads. They're not. It'd be like Varlamov. If the Islanders had gone any further with Varlamov, they were never winning because he's Varlamov and he's in his mid-30s. No, not happening. Alex Diaz says, this draft sucks, so this is the year I would trade the first-round pick. Well, we trade the pick every year, Alex. So what's the difference this year?
Alexander's got a picture of the baby, Grumpy. You didn't even mention it.
I didn't even notice it. It's too small.
You're not, oh, Grumpy, you're not looking at it? What do you mean?
I'm looking at it now. He's so cute, little baby.
Yeah, again, like that mentality is the same one where it's just like, oh, let's just trade away our pick every single year. It's the reason we haven't a draft pick in the last 4 years, and we probably won't this year either.
Steelers will make the team more fun to watch, but it's not going to make a difference. Not good enough. Team's not good enough. Core isn't good enough.
Does Steelers really move the needle, you think?
I think he makes the first line much better and the power play better. I think he'd be our second best forward after Barzell, our second best winger.
We've been talking. You think he'll be okay? Well, second best winger, I don't disagree. He'll be our third best forward.
He might even be better than Horvat.
Have you Nikolai Ehlers?
Nikolai Ehlers, yeah. Look at his career numbers compared to Horvat's, and he don't play on the first line. He's not a first line guy. He's a second line guy for Winnipeg.
There's a reason he's not a first line guy.
Yeah, because they got Kyle Connor on the first line and Mark Scheifele.
Okay, have you ever actually looked at Nikolai Ehlers' numbers? I'll put them up for you. They're not too much different than Bo Horvat's was. Simple as that. I'd actually argue that Bo Horvat's had better career numbers than he. Simple as that. You look at the numbers, Grumpy. Nikolai Ehlers, his early years, 64 and 60 points. Since then, right, he's had some injuries there, but this most recent year, 61 points in 82 games. He's never cracked more than 64 points, and that was when he was 20 years old. I don't know, Grumpy. That doesn't strike me as this is a guy who, and again, this is another guy who is 28 years old. Trading for another guy in his prime who, I don't know, Grump. I'm not.
I didn't say he puts us over the top. All I said is he'd be our probably second best forward, second, third best. Who gives a shit? He'd be one of the top forwards on the team for certain, and he'd make the first line better. I think that's 100% fair.
I think he would make the first line better, but it's like, okay, so we're gonna take I don't know. I'm not on the Nikolai Ehlers train. Let me put it to you like that. I know you are. I'm not.
All I said was, if he's traded to the team, the Islanders aren't going to win anything for at least a decade, an absolute minimum of a decade, not winning anything. So if they're a little bit more fun to watch in the regular season, I'm fine with that. They're not winning anything. They're not good enough. Until the old man is gone, nothing is changing. Sorry, it's just not changing.
Okay. Next comment here from Goon.
Will the Islanders be any better with Wah next year? From the get-go, I disagree with you, Grumpy. TJ is no cheapo. He is cheap. He absolutely is cheap.
I like the word frugal better than cheap.
I'm going with cheap.
Oh, Grumpy.
Let's see how they do the second year under Wah. He had diminishing returns every year that he was in Colorado. His first year was great, and then and after year 3, he was gone. They didn't even make the playoffs. They were a 500 team. You can't play like that forever.
I'll tell you this. Kind of speaking about the Hurricanes one more time. Now, do you remember when the Hurricanes tweeted out cry when the Islanders lost their postseason game? Well, they panned over in period 3 when they gave up the hat trick to Chris Kreider. And they had a little Hurricanes fan crying. And you would not believe how many Islander fans were crucifying this little child who was crying in the stands that they panned over. I was like, holy shit, guys. Come on, he's a kid. He's a kid. I'm like, oh my God, he's a kid.
Okay.
Like, where do we stop? Where do we draw the line?
All the Islander fans who are crying about everything and they wanted to have the moral high ground, you lose it when you do that. You've lost it. The Islander fans are known as whingy bitches around the league. I'm just telling you. They're known as whingy bitches around the league. Absolutely. That's what the majority of Islander fans are looked at as being whingy bitches. Just like most fan bases, when you talk to anybody else, if you look at Toronto, what do you say about Toronto's fans? Oh, they're whingy bitches. I mean, that's just the way it is. And when you do things like that, you just feed into that persona. You just do. I didn't care that Carolina said cry when you lost. Oh, well, you know what? We lost. I didn't care when the Carolina kid cried. I didn't say, oh, you know what? Cry, kid. I didn't say that. Oh, well, you know what? They lost. They lost because their team wasn't good enough at the end. That's why they lost. It's nothing to do with anything else. I mean, I don't understand the mentality to do stuff like that. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
Everybody likes to talk big shit on the internet. In real life, little mice.
Okay, here's the thing. The one thing for me is I'm like, kids, again, it means so much to kids. Adults should have the ability to control themselves. I truly do believe that. As wild and
Who
crazy
do you think is tweeting out these cry things? It's not children.
I know. Trust me, Grumpy. This like, look at this. Am I bullying a child? Absolutely not. Ha ha ha. Crier, losing, just like crying. Or am I above bullying a child? Absolutely.
Here's the thing. Not. Is that Ranger fans doing that or Islander fans?
Islander fans. 1,000.
You just look like a loser. Honestly, you just look like a loser when you do that shit. Loser. That's right. The guy who posted this is a loser.
Yeah.
Who cares? Who cares? You're so upset that you know what? You should go bang on Lamarillo's because that's where the problem lies. Bang on Lamarillo's door. And
I don't like that Carolina's making mean tweets about us. Make us win games so we can make mean tweets.
Absolutely.
Instead of having to wait for somebody else to take care of the problem for you.
I'm serious. Back in the day, nobody did that shit. You lost. You lost. And guess what? Next year, you just hope you're better.
I've never been a fan who laughs at kids crying. Because here's the thing. Every single game, there's a lot of kids when their team gets knocked. Because it means so much to them. And it's like, it's the end of the world to them. And I'm like, God, I'm not going to laugh at kids. I will laugh at grown adults, right? You should know better. You should be an adult. A kid, I'm not going to laugh at a kid.
Here's the thing. I don't laugh. When I see the crying kids instead, I don't laugh at it. I don't feel bad for them.
I kind of do.
Like, oh, well, let's go to the next camera angle because I don't care about that.
I kind of feel a little bad for the kid. I'm not going to lose sleep over it, but I'm like, oh, that's kind of sad.
Guess what?
That's it.
The kid didn't lose any sleep over it either. By the time he got in the car, he was asleep. By the time next day, he's on to the next thing.
Okay.
He was just living in the moment.
Okay.
I don't understand them. And I see a lot of, Carolina sucks. I'm like, Carolina sucks. Why does Carolina suck? Because they beat the Islanders' ass every year? That doesn't mean Carolina sucks. It means that the Islanders suck, that they're owned by Carolina. And here's the thing. If you would have played, people were actually rooting for the Rangers over Carolina, if you can believe that.
I could not believe that.
The Islanders. I'm like, here's the thing. If the Rangers would have beat us, they would have beat the living shit out of us too. Because that's just the way it is. The Islanders aren't good enough. And until they make drastic improvements, that's just the way it's going to be. Nikolai Ehlers, does he make the team better? He'll make them more exciting. It's not going to make any difference when when it comes to brass tacks. Just not going to, because the Islanders aren't good enough. They don't play a modern NHL style.
Guys like Brock Nelson, we already saw this last year at the tail end of the season. He's on the tail end. He's past his peak. He's past his prime. Anders Lee gets worse and worse every year. Guys like Palmieri, I'm expecting 33, 34-year-old Kyle Palmieri to have the best year of his career. No, I'm not. I'm expecting a lot of these guys who are in their 30s probably be taking steps back. Anyway, Tony G said, who pissed in TJ's oatmeal and cut up hot dogs this morning?
Exactly.
Had to lay down the law to Grumpy. Alexander says here, why do you continue to shit on Varlamov, Grumpy? I don't know why Sorokin was terrible in that one start. I love Sorokin, but he was not as good as Varlamov was better.
Varlamov is what he is. He's a good backup. That's what he is. That's what Varlamov is. He's a good backup. Nothing more, nothing less. He'll never get better than he was 3 years ago. 4 years ago. He's gone downhill ever since. He's okay. He's a good backup. That's fine. You don't sign backups to 4-year extensions with no move clauses. You just don't do it. It's just stupid. It says, will the Rangers have their hands full versus the Panthers? Is Phil's Fax a prankster? Yeah, Phil likes Panthers going to beat the Rangers. I have no doubt in my mind. And Phil's Fax, absolutely. When you call him out, I was just trolling there. Well, you know what? Then I take everything he says as a troll. And I like Phil, but I do.
Oh, man. Okay, here you go. Erica T. Grumpy.
I love you, Grumps, and I usually agree with you, but damn, the Rangers are going to win. They have a lethal offense and excellent goaltending. God, I hope I'm wrong. Don't worry, you are wrong. I am right. Erica, just stay on the grumpy old man bandwagon. Don't get off. Just stay with me. You're going to see they're not beating Florida.
Uh-huh.
I feel more confident in Florida beating Rangers than I did Carolina beating Rangers.
I think Florida has a higher I thought Carolina had zero chance, and I said that. I think Florida can win if they have good goaltending. Simple as that. If they don't, no chance.
Yeah, no, I thought Carolina was going to beat them, but it was Anderson. I did preface that with Anderson had to be better.
Rick Roma.
Rangers got a free pass in the first round, true, and the Floyd Canes with no goalie in the second, also true, and still almost choked it away. Florida's a different animal, absolutely. Florida has what Carolina needs: the heart transplant in Kachuk, the physicality down low with and look at Tarasenko. I mean, he's bought into playing team defense. I mean, holy shit. And their defense, right? Remember, Florida started off slow when they had Ekblad and Montour out until like the middle of December. And it's like they just really picked it up down the stretch. They were good. I said they were the best team in the NHL, I think, in March. Then I shifted to Carolina in the beginning of April. And then by the end, I was back on Florida. So
here you go. Continuing along there. DJ DeAngelis says here the Canes totally outplayed the Rangers or the Rags in the game. They were eliminated just that the Rangers capitalized on chances they got.
True. True. Absolutely.
Carolina
outplayed them in that game, and Anderson didn't do. They missed opportunities to put the game away. Shesterkin made a couple of big saves on the breakaways. Aho misses a wide open net on the backhand. They hit a couple of posts, hit a crossbar, and they scored every single time they had a chance.
I know you covered that last time. I'll just say this real quick. You got to capitalize on your chances. Those are teams that win, teams that capitalize. Don't capitalize, you send home, you're sent golfing.
They were outplayed by the Hurricanes, but they deserved to win because their players executed at the most vital times.
Joseph C. saying Grumpy moving the goalpost. Yes, he does that. He does that when he's wrong. Yeah, the Hurricanes offense is built on chaos. Throw as much shit on the net and hope that you outscore the opponents. Yeah,
which was surprising why they didn't do that on the power play. It was astounding to me. Honestly.
Drew L.
Some Rangers fans were trying to do reverse psychology on Chris Kreider, and they called him a guy who only scored garbage time goals. Well, all I know is Chris Kreider's been damn good for the Rangers.
That sounds like something Phil would say.
Yeah, he's been damn good for the Rangers for an awful long time.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Now, if the Rangers win a cup, do you think that's on a retool or a rebuild? It's a freaking retool.
I don't know. They said they're gonna commit to a rebuild. Now, here's the thing.
Did they?
Here's the thing. They went through a rebuild. They had multiple. I mean, now again, these players are not making a huge. Lafreniere's making an impact, but you look at it right. Like Filipino was drafted during the rebuild, right? Adam Fox they acquired through the trade during a rebuild. They went ahead and brought in who the hell is the other guy that's not playing well for them? Swedish player, Grumpy. Kakko's not playing great. They were finished. They went through a rebuild. They had multiple draft picks. Some of them are playing and working out well for them. Some of them aren't. But you look at it like they drafted players that are going to be core pieces through that rebuild. They did. And they hit on a huge free agent. They did a lot of things through the rebuild. They went through a rebuild and won a cup. Potentially, if they win a cup, that's how it went down. That's how it would go down in my opinion.
I don't look at any of the guys all the guys that are contributing were guys who were on the team.
They flat out said we're going through a rebuild.
If they win
a cup, they win a cup. Okay, that's what they said.
But it doesn't matter because they're not winning the cup either. Nick D says, podcast reminder, fire Lil Lamoreno and his son Fredo.
You go, JK.
He's fearing the worst. Don't worry, Jake. Rangers going down this series.
Flex Crew, Grumpy.
Anderson was the main reason the Rangers won, in my opinion. That's right, Flex Crew. You're right.
Yeah, he was definitely a contributing factor. Rick Roma.
Panthers are favored to win the series as the road team versus the President's Trophy winner. That speaks volumes. I'd be very surprised if it isn't Dallas versus Florida in the Stanley Cup final at this point. 100% agree.
I'll tell you this much here.
Florida's a better overall team than the Rangers and then Carolina. A better overall team, and so is Dallas in the West. Dallas is damn good.
I think Dallas is the best team around.
Dallas is real. That, man, I'll tell you what, that'd be a fun – Dallas and Florida – man, oh man! Talk about
you're reading too much into Florida. That's all I'm gonna tell you. You're reading too much into Florida, not enough into the Rangers. I think that series goes 7 games. I think that's going to be a very tightly contested series. Simple as that. Joseph C. You were emphatic that Carolina would win, Grumpy. He was. Ottinger played out of his mind. He absolutely did. Joseph also says Georgiev was a big reason Colorado lost that series. Colorado's offense was better than Dallas's. I thought that too. And think about it. They had how many late game comebacks did they come up just short with in Colorado? I think Georgiev was a big issue for them.
The two games they won, they came back from multiple goals down.
Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I don't know.
Who let him in the deficit early on because of weak goals surrendered? Georgiev did. They were playing in a deficit all series long.
It's a really tough team.
They are a very tough team. I agree with you on that. Status Survival said here, Florida will definitely win, only if Tkachuk is healthy.
Yeah, injuries is a great equalizer. Absolutely.
Is Tkachuk banged up?
I don't think so.
I didn't know.
He'll play.
Here we go. JK Grumpy.
I'm joking about the following statement. Please don't take me seriously. Which small animal do I sacrifice to appease the hockey gods so the Rangers don't win? Probably like your neighbor's dog or cat who's pissing or crapping in your yard.
Something that doesn't affect you.
And I don't know what the size of them are, but, if they're really bothering you, I think they're free for sacrifice.
Oh, man. Okay. Got a comment here from Dan Miller, Grump.
Honestly, as an Islanders, fan, I'll really be disappointed to see the Rangers win the cup only because with Coach Peter Laviolette. Yeah, Laviolette's a really good coach. That was a big, really underrated addition to the Rangers. Phil from Phil's faction, fix, whatever, facts. He always said that Peter Laviolette he knew how to play the Islanders. But when he went to the Rangers, he kind of dismissed them. He thought the Rangers were going to be like fourth in the division. I'm like, I don't think so, Phil. I didn't think they were going to win division. I really thought
he said the Rangers are old. They're this, they're that. They're finishing fourth. Best case scenario.
I thought Carolina was going to win division, and I think in preseason, I think I said Devils second, Rangers third. I think that's what my prediction was. I was wrong. The Rangers were better, and I think a lot of that has to go to Laviolette.
Jeremy Ford says, "Is Edmonton any different than Toronto?" Here's the thing: if Edmonton's winning right now.
Not really. They're almost identical.
Okay. Rob G.
Do rebuilds work? Look at Vancouver. Absolutely.
And again, Vancouver may make the Western Conference Finals. They may not, but they absolutely just needed a new coach and changing up a little bit. But they definitely went through a massive rebuild to build what they have in their core. John A.
No problem with signing of Maxim. Take a shot. Why not? That's what I feel. Yep. Going to be many more bargain basement pickups the rest of the offseason unless the old man moves out money. I'll wait and see if he makes any moves.
Yep.
Everybody's with the team except for Martin and Clutterbuck. I mean, everyone is going to be back.
Bringing back the same roster, baby, and they're going to tell us how it's so different.
Tsyplakov is a good signing, says DJ DeAngelis. Young kid, 6 foot. Well, he's 25. He'll be 26 when the season starts. 6'3", physical, and apparently can find the back of the net. Maybe Lou strikes a little gold here. Oh God knows Lou could use a little luck with some talent lately. I'm going to go in with the hope for the best, prepare for the worst mentality.
Okay, I'm going to let you know this. Okay, I want to put this up now. This for a second, I was like, "Holy crap, George P. You forgot the dash, and that says resigned."
He resigned.
Yes, I know. Re-signed, dash. Okay, gotcha. But yes, Rob Brindamore has agreed to a multi-year extension about 50 minutes ago. He just agreed to a multi-year extension.
Good move for Carolina. I don't think they should have let him go. They need a net front presence. They need a Tkachuk type, and they need a goaltender. You give them those three things, they're gonna be a true.
His seat should be getting toasty. That's all I'm saying. To be signing a multi-year extension, his seat, in my opinion, should be getting a little toasty. That's it.
He was out of contract at the end of the year.
Scott L.
With the Islanders re-signing the Russian prospect Maxim, I think Lou will pull another bait and switch promise in the NHL and lie to him, and he'll demand to go back to the KHL like Len Kovac and Golchev.
And Anatoly Golchev.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Would it surprise me? No. But here's the thing. If he was that good, somebody would snatched him up years ago, or they certainly would have given him more than a 1-year, 2-way contract.
That's exactly. They would have given more than an entry-level deal. They would have said, "I'm offering you a 1-year, $2 million contract on a one-way contract, on a one-way deal, because we think you're that good where you are not going to have the ability to get waived, because we think you're going to be playing on a roster. We're going to give you more than the minimum. We're going to give you more than an entry-level deal. We're going to give you $2 million because there's so much demand for you out there in the marketplace of signing free agents and signing the number one European prospect. They would have given him a more money, and they would have given him a one-way deal. That simple. So don't read in that much. There was so much demand for him because simply the signing of that contract doesn't indicate that.
I think it's being a little bit disingenuous when they say, oh, well, he was, the highest rated Russian
European
free
prospect.
agent. Well, that's because all the really good Russians are already owned by teams. Their rights are already owned by teams.
Yeah. Philip Brunell's shopping cart thief said, I disagree, TJ. Bobrovsky is looking phenomenal. Numbers don't say it. And here's the thing. He played well against an antiquated Boston Bruins, no shooting, no offensive pressure type of team. And he didn't look that great against Toronto. Simple as that. And, save percentage hasn't been great.
He didn't play against Toronto. Played against Tampa.
Tampa, my apologies.
Michael Moisa says, we'll see in camp, but he was the number one European free agent. Whoop-de-doo. George Pay says, Lou isn't changing spots. Old, slow vets get ice time. Kids are spectators. True.
Oh, man. Here you go. Continuing along there, Grumpy. My little brownie.
Unless a team wins the cup, it's a failed season. Doesn't matter if it happened in the first round of the finals. A loss is a loss. Do you agree, Grump? I agree to a certain extent, but there are certain teams that should be disappointed. Like Carolina should be disappointed. Honestly, they should be disappointed this year. Boston, I don't think they should be disappointed because they weren't as good as Toronto. First of all, Toronto outplayed them, and they certainly were manhandled by Florida. But like if a team like Buffalo made the playoffs and win a round, I think that's a successful season for them.
It's all depending on where you are
and what expectations are.
Yep. If Buffalo, right, they've not made the postseason in 13 years. If they made the postseason and won and lost in 7 games, I'd say, well, that's a successful year for them, taking steps in the right direction. But if Buffalo makes the postseason 5 years in a row and they continue to have first round exit after first round exit, yeah, you're held at a higher standard because, you've already hit that plateau. We need to still see progress because the end goal is to get to that top point, which is the Stanley Cup. We're a team that's meandering around. We make the postseason, scratch our way in, and continue to lose every time. That's not good enough. Simple. Good. Freedom Fund Adventure, Grumpy.
Good evening, all. I really like the Russian guy, Maxim. 6 foot. Now he's 6'5". He was 6'3", 6 foot.
He's 6'7", Maxim.
I heard he was 6'4". Who knows how big he is? He's probably only 5'8". Scores and is physical. We will see him. It turns out, but it was mentioned the Islanders may use him at center. Yeah. Should be the end of number 44. That's only if you can move number 44.
I think he's movable. I do.
We'll find out.
Here you go. Grumpy. Simon Holmstrom set the world on fire just for different reasons. Oh, gosh. Freedom Fund Adventure, Grumpy.
Do you all know how dumb Lou is? He knew Engvall was soft and inconsistent in Toronto. He traded for him and gave him a 7-year contract. That alone should get Lou fired. I 100% agree. 100% agree.
Yep. Here you go. Frank says here, TJ, we got to two Eastern Conference Finals. How the F did we only have 5 wins? What the F, man? No. We only had 5 post. The most we've ever had in an 82-game regular season is 5 postseason wins. When we made back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals, the first time COVID interrupted us, it was the 2019-2020 season. We played 72 games. Then we had a 2-month break before the playoffs started. So that was not a full 82-game season. And the year after that, we made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. We only played 50-some-odd games, which was a shortened COVID season. And then we made it back to the Eastern Conference Finals again. What do you look confused about? This is about the statement earlier, Grumpy. Remember the Larry article? He said, we've never won more than 5 postseason games under Lou Lamoriello when we've had to play an 82-game regular season. That is correct. The 2 times we made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, they were both COVID-shortened years, remember?
Yeah, but I thought they were talking about 3 postseason wins in the last 3 years.
No, he mentioned the team has never had more than 5 postseason wins in a season and an 82-game regular season under Lou Lamoriello. He's just talking.
That would have been the first year before COVID where we beat Florida and then we swept Pittsburgh. And then, of course, Carolina. We just bent over and took it up from behind from Carolina. Again.
No, the Florida series was that part of the that was part of the 1-game play-in or whatever the play-in. That was part of the COVID season, Grumpy.
I don't think it was. Or maybe it was. I don't
It
know.
was. We
Okay.
played. Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes. So again, we won most in an 82 game regular season. We won 5 postseason games. The 2 years we went to Eastern Conference Finals, as we've talked about on the show, were both COVID truncated seasons, and that's the reason maybe
Okay.
why we had those runs.
Okay. Next.
Right in front of Edge Grumpy. Listen.
Is Son X already playing video games? Fact. Maxim is a positive potential signing, but Lou has a lot more work to do. Lou got lazy and wants to get people to like him now while using other people's money. I don't know if Maxim is going to be any good. We hope so, but I wouldn't. I'm if you're expecting him to, hey, he's going to slot in as a first line winger with Barzell and Horvat, I think you're going to be sorely disappointed.
Yeah. George B says here, we aren't doing spit again. What NHL general manager is taking the shit that Lou needs to get rid of? He is going to have to package picks up. But of course, Lou has us at the cap maximum with bottom 6 shit. Yeah,
true.
Mario says here, there was an article proposing a buyout for Lee. Coach B, Coach Tommy Baffy commented that Lee is not going anywhere because Lou and Waugh like him and they're going to keep him as captain. I think that's true. He's not going anywhere.
Well, like I said, if you keep players because you like them as opposed to how they perform, is it any wonder that we don't win?
Christopher C. said, TJ, Carolina never did a rebuild. Neither did the Bruins or the Rangers said they went through a rebuild. I'm just going to go with what they said off. The Bruins, they haven't done it.
Did not.
But guess what? We're the Bruins at home with us. And we're the Bruins last year at the present.
And Carolina absolutely did a rebuild after their first cup. Absolutely.
But guess what? Not all rebuilds work. And Carolina has not won the Stanley Cup, that desired fruit that all teams want. Simple. But here you go. Drew L.
Islanders need to sign Michael Penix to become our next left winger.
Oh, gosh. Here you go. Freedom from Adventure, Gumpy.
Rebuilds do work if you have a talented front office and owners who spend. Eventually, all rebuilds work. Islanders rebuild went on for so long was Long Island politics. Then Wang didn't wish to spend Milbury and Snow. Okay.
Here you go. And State of Survival, Grump.
We have a great late round drafting, Cizikas, Lee, and Pelech, etc. We can't draft in the first round properly. Okay. Cizikas, you're talking about 3 guys in 15 years? No. Pelech was a 3rd rounder. Cizikas was a 3rd rounder.
We've had late round picks work out.
Okay, but not
guys that are Hall of Fame caliber talent. Like even if you look at Dallas, right, who's still around and kicking, Jason Robertson, Jake Ottinger, and Heiskanen were all in the same draft. Like, those are all 3 huge contributors for them. Dan Leachin.
This is exactly why I like the idea of racking up draft picks. Yes, you won't hit on every guy, but the more picks you have, the better chance you'll have to hit on somebody. Exactly.
John A. says here, the rebuild talk is not and cannot happen under Lou, obviously due to his age, but he has not been able to draft many NHL caliber players. Please pull up his Devils drafts from 2004 to 2014 and the Leafs draft from 2016 to 17. Okay, we'll look at that in a second. I'll look at those old Devils drafts. Go ahead.
I would say any.
Owners hate doing rebuilds, says Save Survival. Jeremy Ford.
It's not true. Because if your team is a loser, at least you have hope. Teams that scuffle around and have no shot, they have empty seats. Look at UBS Arena. How many times when the Islanders are just kicking around that nobody's there?
All righty, Grumpy. We got a few more comments left. We're gonna have to wrap things up. Jeremy Ford, Grump.
Tampa's core was good, but it was Giroux, Gaudreau, and Coleman on the 3rd line that pushed them over the top. Okay, but it was Vasilevsky, Stamkos, Hedman, Point. Those were all draft picks. Those were the starting team.
Correct.
3rd round, 3rd line guys don't win championships.
NYC Islanders says here, this is survivorship bias. You can't look at Stanley Cup winners who also did a rebuild without looking at every team that did a rebuild didn't win a Stanley Cup. We, at the very beginning of this, and maybe you didn't hear that, we said not all rebuilds work. Not all rebuilds are guaranteed. Sometimes you have to rebuild during a rebuild. Sometimes they take 13, 14 years. Sometimes they don't. We went over that. That is a risk. Absolutely. But you notice through the majority, even if you want to argue and split hairs, retool, rebuild, doesn't matter. The majority of the teams we looked at over the last 10, 15 years all went through a rebuild to establish their core and win a Stanley Cup. Every single one of them, except maybe not every single one of them. Every team except Vegas, who went through a lottery or went through a expansion draft. The vast majority of those teams all did that to establish their core of top-tier players to push them over the top to win a cup. Simple. Dan Leachin.
And the more picks you have, the more ability you have to move in the draft. Or if you pick someone in the first round, as both of you were saying, and aren't working, you can move them. And if you both move them early enough before they depreciate, you can get something back. The snow trade of Reinhart was a beautiful example of that. Absolutely. Lou Lamoriello believes in, let's see if we can keep a guy and give him, let's see if we can run his value down to absolutely nothing and then try to move him, and then no one wants him anymore. The list is too long to even mention.
There you go. Continuing on here, Dan as well.
And this is why I was screaming about us not trading guys for assets in the non-playoff year, 2022, not trading Clutterbuck. Green was so foolish. I don't care if we got 4th and 5th round picks. I'd rather have the pick and take a shot at someone, or even last year.
Doesn't matter if it's a weak draft, not a weak draft. The likelihood that maybe one of those selections pan out is a possibility. You need every one of those possibilities, despite how small it may be of a probability.
You've seen Washington and Pittsburgh already start their rebuilds.
Yep.
Now, they're not tanking out, but they are moving guys at the deadline.
Sater said, that's not TJ. He's an older version of Lanny McDonald. That's why he wears the stash.
Wow.
I assume that's not a nice comment to call me Lanny McDonald. But that's
not an older version of Lanny McDonald.
Frank K says there needs to be 2 billboards, one of Malkin to sell the team and one for Lou to be gone. This organization is embarrassing. The Rangers sent out a letter about rebuilding and now are going to win a cup.
They're not winning.
I hope Malkin enjoys his 9 to 10,000 fans a night next season.
Except when the Rangers come into the building, then it'll be sold out.
Tony Cheese says here, I'm waiting for TJ to say, I hate you, I wish I was never born, and slam his bedroom door. Michael Kuza Carmen says here, the lottery analogy is apt. When you buy a lottery ticket, you're buying the fantasy of being filthy rich. Sure. Yeah, you buy the fantasy that maybe the team, and it does work, just not all the time, but it does work for the ones it does work. You get to win the cup. Tony G says TJ buys meat on clearance. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're
clearance meat, that should have been the last comment.
Same day. You're good.
Most recent picks to make the NHL: Holmstrom in 19, Bolduc in 19, Dobson. Okay, Dobson and Wallstrom don't count. Neither does anybody before that. Aho, Barzell, because none of them were Lou guys. Barzell, Bavillier, Wotherspoon, Sorokin, Taves, Pulak, not much. And most of those were Garth Snow draft picks. Bolduc and Holmstrom are the only Lou Lamoriello draft picks to make this team.
Oh man.
A number 7 defenseman, and
I like Riley. He's amazing that we got him for nothing.
Well, we're going to pay for him now.
Thanks for drinking the Kool-Aid. Oh man. Okay. He was a good pickup for nothing. Good selection, good pickup. It was a no-brainer by Lou. It was a good selection. Everything fell accordingly. Good to see. Joseph C said here, Vegas and Colorado did not have stud goalies the last 2 years. They won a cup. Aiden Hill is a good goalie. I will say that. Hill, now you're able to see now, right? He was a guy who the hell is this no-name who won a cup? And then you watch him this year, like, okay, gotcha. He's actually a legitimate goalie. And he is.
But then if you think about it, Colorado was just a wagon the year that they won.
Potential Hall of Famer Cale Makar, McKinnon, and Rantanen. They had 3 potential Hall of Famers on that team, at least. That matters. It does. Philip Burnell's shopping cart thief said, people forget Colorado hit 2 bottoms before they won a cup. They got Duchesne 2nd overall, and Tavares in that Tavares draft class. They lost him, saw the franchise wasn't built the way they wanted to, bottomed out again, and they landed, McKinnon, etc.
That's right. And
instead of saying we need to go ahead and try to put everything forward to let's try to get some playoff wins and get some revenue. We don't need to worry about the rebuild. They said, F it. The team's not good enough. We need to continue to rebuild so we can win a cup. And it did work.
Yep.
Tony Cheese says here, TJ has a coupon booklet that he embarrasses his wife with at the grocery store.
TJ does the grocery shopping.
I do the grocery shopping. That's right. SP.
SP says, our biggest issue next year is that the Metro 3 is almost certainly going to go to New Jersey. We're once again going to have to count on everyone else sucking to make the playoffs. It wouldn't surprise me if the Islanders make the playoffs. The teams I'm worried about are the teams out of the Atlantic Division, Buffalo and Detroit. I mean, Tampa's still going to be there. Florida, Boston, Toronto, they're still going to be there. It's one of those other teams. That's not what I'm worried about. Because I think Washington and Pittsburgh are
Freedom Fund Adventure, Grumpy.
The Warden turned 29 today. Only about 19. I want the Islanders to get more guys who can play with tempo, intensity, and skill. I would gleefully move on from Fasching, Engvall, Pelech, Pulak, and Pajot. 12 new guys would be nice. Yeah, well, you're not able to. I mean, Fasching, what does it matter for Fasching? He doesn't make any money. Pierre Engvall, 7 years. You think anybody's taken him? Pelech, Pulak, no one's taken them. Pajot still got 2 more years at $5 million per. They're just hard guys to move with no trade clauses. Just really tough.
There you go. Oh God. Okay, we got a few more comments here, Grumpy. Sorry we didn't get to everybody's. X isn't working today, so I tried my best. John A says Florida beat Vasilevsky and Swayman. They could beat Igor Shesterkin. Frank K says here Rangers are beating the Cats. I'm sorry, the Florida Panthers in 5. They have found many different ways to win this year. The Cats have no shot. Maga says Shesterkin gave up 3 goals every game almost, and Rob Brindamore is overrated. Now we do have one meme that was submitted here by Tony Cheese, and I think it's a good way to end the show on here. Okay, there you go. Can you read that for us?
When the wife gets gifts on Mother's Day and you get nothing on Father's Day.
Oh, look at that. He's getting angry. My Little Brownie says here, TJ and Grump, we know how bad the Islander situation is, but let's give a few positives to take off in this offseason, such as Kyle McLean. Yeah, I think it's a positive. I think the guy, Maxim is a potential positive. I mean, he's a no risk potential positive. So there's some positives, but it's just the negatives continue to outweigh. Let's see what happens in the off season. But yeah, today we just want to conquer. Do rebuilds work? And absolutely they do. And you can win a cup through rebuild. Majority of teams that win a cup go through a rebuild, and they establish their core that way. But sorry we didn't get to all through comments. We're going to wrap things up here at 2 hours. Grumpy, what do you want to say before we wrap things up here today?
I want to say love and laughter to everyone who listens and even those who don't, from TJ, the grumpy old man, and even though he's not here, Son X.
Yes, Son X is about at a participation rate or attendance rate of 50% this offseason, so he needs to pick up his slack, Grump. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching the show. Thank you, everybody, for listening here. Again, if you like this content, do a few things for us. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and like the video. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, grumpy old man, and we'll see you guys next Saturday, 8 p.m.
Tomorrow night on the TJ and Grumpy Old Man Show.
That's right. See you then. Thanks so much, Grumpy.
My pleasure.